G'day everyone, I'm Smokescreen and welcome back to the next episode of the Trackside Lounge podcast. I think we're up to episode 4 now, are we? It's taken us 4 episodes to reach a big milestone in this Trackside Lounge podcast today because we have, for the very first time ever, an accompaniment to our little trio of people we've got hosting this podcast today. We've got our first guest making us a quartet. I'd like to welcome one of the staple Oceania drivers, driving also for New Zealand, Sidawg. Say hello, mate. How are you?
Hello, I'm good, mate. How are you going?
I'm good, thank you. I would just like to say it's lovely to meet you. I don't think I've ever spoken to you before, so it's an honour to be here.
You almost beat me in the last race there, didn't you?
Oh,
almost.
Did I?
Yes,
I don't know. I was pretty on edge in that. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, just keep an eye out on my channel for the video about the last round of the Toyota Cup in the Supra at Suzuka. Keep an eye out for that one. But once again, we are joined by my 2 very good mates over from New Zealand as well, so I'm significantly outnumbered here. I've got Atom. Say hello.
G'day everyone, how are we?
Good, yeah, I'm excellent. Thanks for asking. And we've got Nismonath as well. How are we doing?
Good morning, good evening, wherever you're listening from. Welcome along. Yeah, doing all right, mate. Can't complain. I mean, I can,
Excellent.
but I'm not going to.
Well, you're not feeling the best, are you?
Oh, one of those days, mate. It's all good. It's all good.
Yeah, excellent. Beautiful. Okay, well, I think we're going to sort of start off this podcast. We will sort of get into more of a discussion like we normally do, but I think obviously we are going to cast the spotlight a little bit on Side to begin today. We've got some prompts, and I think Atom has a lovely big prompt to start off.
I've come in with a few, but I've just thought of a good clickbaity title for you and Simon there, Smock, is racetrack rivals become acquainted for the first time, and then you can do some kind of red background and you guys facing off or something. That'd be really good for the viewers, I reckon.
That'd be alright.
Do the red and blue split like the Gran Turismo Cup.
Yeah, you could do something like that.
The boxing bell, ding ding.
Yeah, so we've all been on track together quite a lot recently, but obviously, Simon, your history goes back a lot further than I think all of ours actually. It definitely goes back further than mine, and I think further than Nismo's as well.
Oh yeah,
I would presume
same for me as well.
So you've been on the world stage, obviously, Simon, and you've been flowing around the world to race on Gran Turismo. Could you tell us a bit about what that experience was like for you, and you know how it all went?
That's a nice broad question there, Adam. Well, it's kind of a tale of 2 stories, I think, because the first tour, which was the Japanese one in 2018, the regional one, that was such an unknown experience for so many of the people that went. And to go to it and be like, well, I can't believe this is a thing, and you have no comprehension of the scale of the events until you've been at them and the amount of money that's put into them. And you can never prepare properly for that, and that's quite tricky. But to go to that, and I went reasonably well. I only just missed qualifying for the World Finals, which was a bit of a surprise because I went along as someone that was playing on controller and had to learn how to race on the wheel in about a week, which was great. And that was really, really cool, but it prepared me really well for the upcoming events that have come along. Something that the people in our region, I don't think you can really prepare for is the travel. Because I don't know if you guys travelled that kind of distance before?
Yeah, once or twice on very rare occasions, and it was always organised by someone else for me.
Yeah.
And I mean, the extent for me is I've never been on a plane, so...
I know there's been some issues for some people with in the GT World Tour Series and things like that. I heard there was an issue with Fabian Portia for the Sydney World Tour to get a visa, and he ended up coming in on like the final day. Did you have problems like that, did you?
I didn't. I was lucky enough. I think New Zealand's on quite good terms with a lot of those countries, so we get kind of automatic entry, which is really handy. But it was just like for example, the Austrian tour was a 19-hour flight followed by a 6-hour flight, and then I landed at 5 a.m. on the first day, and so 8 hours later I was doing practice. And you've got some guys that, like I remember Martin Grady from the UK, obviously. he had a 1.5 hour flight. That was it from home.
Oh yeah.
Landed in Austria and then was ready to go. It's like, how do you compete against that kind of stuff?
Honestly, I think if I was to ever go to a world tour, obviously, brave and all that sort of thing, I'd rather it was literally on the other side of the world rather than next door to me. Obviously, if it came to Australia, I think most of the guys from our region would go there just for the sake of meeting up because it's nearby. But going to the other side of the world is something that's quite hard to do at the best of times. So if I had the option between two world tours, one was close to home and one was the other side of the world, I'd pick the other side of the world,
Yeah.
personally.
Because you get to travel around a bit too. You get to see some of the sights of the city as well. I'd imagine that'd be a quite good part of it.
Yeah, it was really cool. Their emphasis was always on the player experience, which is quite interesting because that's quite unique in the esports world. And there are pros and cons to that, right? Like a lot of the other competitions are more kind of like prize money focused, and it's not that it's bad, but to be able to like travel to New York, stay in Times Square, and have an event in Times Square, pretty unbelievable, I think, for a lot of people. And Monaco was obviously pretty cool as well. Coming up with Monaco's Grand Prix this weekend.
I get all gushy when I think of Monaco. Oh, do I want to go there? Oh,
I think you should.
Absolute dream that'd be.
Yeah. It's pretty easy actually. You just land in southern France and you drive like half an hour and you're there. And the place is only like the size of a suburb, so it doesn't take that long to walk. The whole track is basically the length of the country, which is pretty unusual.
Yeah.
So do you get much time for? I mean, obviously with the World Tour, everyone, you see the racing, you see the spectacle of the event itself. Do you get much time for sightseeing, or is it basically show up, do the race, home the next day?
It depended on the tour. A lot of it, like for example, Sydney, I saw none of Sydney at all. We were.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah, we were based obviously at the theme park. What's it? Luna Park. Yeah. And so we did a few things there, but besides that, it was just to and from the hotel. The Nurburgring one was a bit interesting because obviously you're at the racetrack, so you could go and see stuff there. That was really cool. But the rest of it, not really. Like you're on quite a tight kind of time schedule. Like you're basically on a quarter of an hour schedule, like all day, from about 9 in the morning to 7 at night.
Wow.
So it's quite a shock for a lot of people that may not have the experience in like public relations and speaking and stuff, because you'll get whisked away and you have to go and shoot this video, or you have to go and do an interview, or you have to go and take photos or that kind of stuff, and that's quite tricky for a bunch of just gamers, you know what I mean? Yeah. And you can see if you watch like the progression of the tours that people got used to it, and that's me too. I remember watching the interviews that I had in Tokyo compared to the ones that I had in like Monaco, and it's because I'm a completely different person, because you just nothing can prepare you really for standing in front of a crowd, particularly if you're at the Nurburgring and you've just had an interesting race and you've got Julie Hardy sticking the mic right under your nose. That's a challenge.
We'll probably talk about that a little later on, I'm sure. But
I thought you might.
I wanted to. Well, before we do, I wanted to call back just to something that you said just in passing a little earlier, and you guys might have not quite realised what he said. You qualified for your first world tour on the controller.
Yeah.
Not even on a wheel.
Yep. There's
How?
Yeah, there's a few people that can do that, but nowadays I just don't think.
Did Solus do it too?
Yeah.
Solus did, yeah. He's the other high profile qualifier on controller. But I think they made a big song and dance about it at his first world tour on the commentary, but I forget.
I remember the first world tour I watched on YouTube. It was sort of near the start of when I really got into it, which was I think 6 months or so after the release of the game. And there were people competing, like racing, on controller. I think there was a couple of drivers on controller, and then that's all I've seen since. So obviously they force you to use the wheel now, but it's just interesting to see like people on controller competing against people on the wheel. And like as a controller user back when I was watching that, it was just like mesmerizing to see, because I was nowhere near the pace. I was nowhere near the pace I even was now on controller. I couldn't even begin to imagine to be qualifying for world events on the controller. So it's a really big testament to your skill level. Si?
It was a challenge. I think you've there's kind of two schools of thought, I think, with people that play Gran Turismo. There's people that really understand how cars work, and those people, I think, could drive, you know, you can put them on a controller, you can put them on a wheel, you can put them on any wheel, and they'll be fast straight away because they understand how the dynamics work. And then there are people that are really good at playing the game Gran Turismo, and those people on the controller are like unstoppable. And you can see there's a few drivers like that. But if you put them on the wheel, they don't get it because it's a completely different philosophy. What I couldn't believe in Japan was there were people using the motion controls, and they were going fast.
Yeah, right.
I've heard things about that. I've heard that the motion controls can actually be quite competitive.
Oh, it was crazy to watch. Yeah, I had no idea how they were doing it.
Do they rest it on their leg, or what do they do with it?
They're literally just going like this. They're just doing that.
Wow!
And I don't know how they were doing it. And they're smoking these other dudes in the fields. I was like, wow, can't believe it.
I never got my head around motion controls.
I didn't either.
Even the early days of PlayStation having a motion control, I think the original MotorStorm or something had a motion, because the 6-axis was one of the bigger features of the obviously brand new DualShock 3 controller at the time, and they were really trying to in that respect it was a bit of a tech demo, but I could play it, but I could just never properly get my head around.
Did it just like not feel right? For lack of a better explanation, or
yeah, basically. I mean, again, we're talking MotorStorm, which is obviously a very arcade racing game. You basically just turn left, turn right. I can't imagine doing it in a simulation context like Gran Turismo, but yeah, it was just. I mean, like I was saying, clearly it works for some, but just I just personally couldn't quite get my head around it. So it's interesting that there's just so many. You know, everyone's different. You know, and it's kind of like the wheel debate. You know, you have people saying, "Oh, the Thrustmaster's the best, the Fanatec's the best," except it's on a grander scale. Oh, the controller's the best. Oh, the motion controls are the best. Oh, there's probably someone who's fast with the D-pad. You know, so
yeah.
An X and circle.
X and circle.
Imagine.
Yeah, well, that's how I used to play Gran Turismo 4 and stuff back in the day. Was with X and square. Yeah, I think those days are kind of gone to some degree now. I don't think it's too hard. I think.
Sorry, I was going to say when you got to that tour after having qualified on controller. What did you end up going over to the wheel for the racing, or?
Yeah. So I practiced on a G29,
okay,
and that was all right. Like I kind of got a fundamental understanding of it. But you're playing against people that have raced on the wheel for like 5 years, so that's pretty tricky, particularly with the TGT being quite different to like the G29 or how other wheels work. You don't really know until you've used one. But it's hard, right? And it's hard for any person that's in that position with the controller, because you have to kind of actively take a loss, because you know that if you're on controller you could do this qualifying time, and you have to hop on the wheel and just know that you're going to be a second and a half slower, and you're probably going to crash off, and you have to kind of just be able to see improvement. I think most people that have done that kind of journey, because there's a few people that have done that, particularly within our region, that have done it, and you kind of just go, okay, look, you'll be a second slower, but your ceiling is so much higher than the controller, because particularly with those days in the game, the tyre wear was so high in the races, and with the controller it's so challenging to manage that tyre life.
I saw that on Sunday too.
Tyre wear was
yeah,
definitely a bigger thing. And I think, I mean, like personally, I never had a wheel for like the PlayStation 2 era, the PlayStation 3 era. I got my wheel. I got all the way up, about halfway up to B, with just the controller, and then I got a T150 on a just a stand, and there was about probably a 2 or 3 month sort of window there where I was equally fast on the controller or the wheel. Obviously my wheel skill improved, that it overtook my controller. So yeah, there is definitely more, you know, people like that. It can't be a unique situation, but it's just amazing that, like you say, that people could qualify. Could it happen today? Probably not, because the skill.
No.
I would say
it's so high now.
I would say it's possible. If someone put enough time in, it would be possible, but it would be significantly easier just to have a wheel.
Yeah.
Simon, there's your 2022 challenge. Get yourself to a live event on a controller.
Yeah,
it's funny to think I can't even drive on Gran Turismo anymore with a controller. Like,
Yeah, it's pretty foreign, isn't it?
I can barely do it. Yeah,
I'm a bit like
and
that.
even with the feedback on the new controller, that
that's tricky.
doesn't help me at all. But I don't use it anymore, so.
It's hard, isn't it? Because you have to, at some point, realize you have to go, well, how serious do I want to do this? Because for a lot of people, spending $600 to $700 on a wheel is just completely out of the realm of possibility. And for me, the way I managed it was having a really cheap setup, but with a really expensive wheel bolted to it. There's videos on YouTube of my old setup if you've seen those. But yeah, how do you justify? You go, like if you're young and you're a student, how can you justify spending north of $1,000 on a racing rig? And for people with families particularly, it's quite tricky in that respect. But I think, to be honest, nowadays, you have to. I think Daniel Solis will still qualify on controller. I don't know how he does it, but he does. But he's equally as good on the wheel. Obviously, he's won the world title in 2020, didn't he, with Subaru? So it is interesting, and it was hard, but at the same time, I was really surprised when I went to Japan and was on the TGT and the feedback. I was like, I understand this. Going back to what I said about how you can understand how to drive cars, like I just understood straight away. It just felt natural, which was really good because
your thing.
Yeah, it was, and I'm sure it was the same for you guys when you. Because what wheels do you guys use?
So I'm on the TGT now. I went from controller to TGT. Well, a while ago now, but I knew going into it that there was going to be a transition period, so I was going to take a step back in order to take 2 steps forward. Took me about a week and a half, 2 weeks, then I started seeing pace compared to the pad, sorry. But I had a big issue with catching slides. I was really struggling with that for a lot longer, but the pace was there, so, I still struggle to catch slides. Case in point, Sunday nights. Anyway. What did you do, Nismo? What was your controller to wheel transition like?
I was on the controller. I bought a used T150 for like $400, and it came with a wheel stand. Just a simple stand metal thing. It was sort of worked. And then I bought a T150 brand new from like EB Games or PB Tech or something. Brand new G29. That was about 4.5 years ago, and I'm still using it now. Couple years ago, I got a proper rig, so the wheel stands out. I've got a proper rig now, but I'm currently thinking about upgrading because it's served me very well, and there's no problems. But I'm sitting there going, how long until I start to get some problems? So we'll see. If there's anyone that wants to, sponsor me a wheel, hit us up. So.
What about you, Smuck? What was your transition period like?
Well, okay, I was on controller. I think I was there for about 1.5 years, if I recall correctly, on controller. And then I started sort of really getting into like watching content creators and that sort of thing, seeing the skills and the awesome racing they'll have. And, it's sort of from there, it was really starting to talk to me. I was like, I think I want a wheel, but I wasn't in a position when I was living at home to actually get a wheel and get a setup and allocate time because I had to share the house with everybody else. And then when it came to me moving out of home after I graduated, I spent my Christmas money, the money I got for Christmas, on a Logitech G29. And that was over at my grandparents' house, so I got it out of the box and tested on some flimsy little I don't even know what you call it, like a coffee table, but it like hangs over your chair. You basically eat off it, and it was like flimsy as anything. And my first sort of couple of days on it, I did lose the enthusiasm a bit. I was like, man, this is so much harder. But then I got it home, and the first thing I did is buy the cheapest wheel stand I could find, about $100 off eBay. Doesn't even have a brand name, and I still use that. And basically from there, it was just a matter of getting used to it. I kind of realized after those first couple of days, I was like, okay, it's just the adjusting to it is once I adjust to it and get comfortable with how it operates, I'll feel a lot more enthusiastic about it. And it just went from there. And like I said, I couldn't drive on controller now, so yeah, I still use the Logitech G29. I've gone through about 4 of them because the pedals are a bit crap. for lack of a better descriptor.
Oh, Logitech's sponsorship just went out the window for you, mate.
I've been told things about the G29 pedals, but then like I look at my pedal set and I'm like, are you sure?
I think I asked you about this the other day, Nissan. I was like, how the hell have you got your pedals to last 4 years? If I get 4 months out of a pedal set, I'm impressed. But like that being said, if anybody does ask me like what is the best wheel to buy to start with, I'm like Logitech G29. Find it on sale, and then go from there. And I always recommend buy it from a physical retail outlet. Don't buy it online, because then when the pedals mess up, which they probably will, you can just easily return it, and most of the time they'll just swap it on the spot, which I've done 3 times.
I think warranty is an essential part of purchasing a wheel from any company.
Yeah.
Logitech, Thrustmaster, Fanatec, every single one. You must make sure you get a warranty, because they all have problems.
And I've seen people like with so many difficulties, like shipping it overseas, shipping it back because it's got a problem, and then the manufacturer can't find the issue, and then it takes so long. It's like, if you buy from a retailer, you can literally go in the day it breaks, tell them the problem, and a lot of the time they will just swap it on the spot for a brand new one.
Yeah.
If you have a race that night, you're sorted, rather than
that's what happened to me. That's what happened to me.
Sorry,
I've got a backup wheel now. Yeah. I've got myself a backup wheel.
Rightio, Mr. Streamer over here.
I just want to get a sec on. Oh
no, I was just to say, I keep telling myself that I've got the T150 as a backup, but like realistically,
it kind of is. If it's a wheel that works, it's a backup. So my backup's a T300 going from the TGT to the T300. So that's there just in case I need it. So essential services. So I just want to get us back on track I did want to talk to Si about a couple of things. So we talked before about the World Tour experience, and Simon's obviously been on a few of them. Someone you met, Simon, on those World Tours was a very high-profile YouTube figure. A certain Steve Alvarez Brown, or Super GT. So where did you meet him, and what was that like?
Yeah, so Steve, he used to do Forza videos back in the day, as I'm sure you've probably all seen. Yeah. With his with people just trying to wipe him out the entire time.
Video.
Yeah,
shameful Rammer video.
Yep. And then he got invited to come to the New York event, and that was like his first event for this. It's hard to think about now because he's big fish now, isn't he? And and he comes along, and he's kind of shy to start off with, but oh man, he parties hard, and he just
that's what I said.
He's every bit like you think he is from the videos. Is exactly what he's like. He's really down to earth, and he's really, really fun. But oh man, he just memories of partying with him on a rooftop in New York. I've got videos of that. I'll probably put it on my Twitter.
You've got the memories. He probably doesn't.
He doesn't. Yeah. Yep.
It's funny because when we were sort of talking about prompts to ask you, we kind of threw around the idea of what is Super GT like in real life. First thing I said is I think he's a bit of a party animal, and there you go.
Yeah. He's cool though. He's really good natured, real good dude, and he has a lot of time for everyone, which I think is really nice. This is true also of Jimmy and Tom and all the guys involved with that.
Yeah.
The crew that they got involved for that is really, really good. And that's across all the commentary teams as well, because you've got like Lucas Ordonez in Spain and the German guys as well. But yeah, in terms of like what he's like, he's very good at what he does, and I think you can see that if you watch his streams, like the professionalism and how he films and how he approaches it. Now, one of my favourite memories of Steve was that he considered himself a bit of a hired gun for those Pro-Am races at the World Tours, and he won everything all the way up to Monaco, if you recall. And
he raced
someone. Yes, he did. Yes.
Yeah.
He got punted off by Lewis Hamilton, I think. Not many people can say that in GT. And then he got.
He is Alex Albon after all. So
yes, he does indeed. Yeah. He his run of wins got ended by someone in Monaco, and I was pretty happy about that. Not gonna lie. But yeah, like he's crazy. He gave me a can of Rich Energy, which was really cool. I don't know how he managed to get that.
That'd be worth thousands now, mate.
Or nothing. And there's a video of me testing that. It's not great. But yeah, just a real cool dude. Has a lot of time for everybody. I hope that he will attend the other tours going forwards.
Yeah.
He came in as a not a race director, but as an analyst.
Analyst?
He analysed racing.
Yeah.
I feel like in some ways, like he's best used as just like a loose cannon with a mic. You know what I mean? Like
he's not Julia. What do you reckon?
Yeah, well, he should, because he did the lap guides and stuff for the people as well, which were cool. But he's at his best when he's off script.
So what you're saying is that basically Super GT is in his videos. He is himself. That is what you see is what you get with that guy.
Oh yeah. There's a guarantee he never scripts anything. He just hits record and goes. Yeah. So it would have been cool if he had come down to Sydney, but I think he had other things, and then obviously no one really foresaw COVID. But hopefully he turns up again. He may. He was getting close enough to qualifying, which would have been really interesting.
He was talking about it at one stage. He was saying, I think he ended up he set himself a brief goal of saying, I think I'm going to qualify this year. Didn't end up happening. I think he lost a bit of his mojo towards the end of GT Sport, which I think was understandable. It was a long ass game.
Was he around for top 16 races? Did he do any of those?
He wasn't in any of them. I don't think he was on competing.
He was on controller for a long time.
Okay.
Yeah, he I guess it's true of anybody. I mean, you guys as well, with content creators. What you don't see is that he does a 30-minute race, but then he spends 10 hours editing it. And so trying to keep up his schedule of releasing videos at the same time as racing competitively, I think, was always going to be a challenge, particularly in the region he's in.
You did a bit of content creation. Well, you were part of his content creation for the GT7 release, weren't you?
Oh, yeah, I was pre-release, Steve and I played a little bit because we were the only people we knew with copies of the game. So we wanted to see how the online worked. And both of us foolishly chose the BMW M6 at the time, which, if you recall, we were like, what on earth are these physics? Because as soon as you touch the throttle, you spin around, we couldn't believe it. And at that time, it was really hard to earn money, so we couldn't buy anything else. So it's funny to go back and watch those videos because it's a lot has changed. I've been trying to get him to get involved with stuff here. It would be cool. He's keen, but obviously 12-hour difference is hard.
Yeah, time differences are always going to be hard in that sort of thing, aren't they? So
we talk from time to time. That's good. He's a cool dude, real cool dude.
Yeah. Someone else you met, obviously at the World Tours, and this is a question I actually want to ask you. I wonder if you'll catch the reference if I give you this. Now, I want to know. And this is relevant to the World Tours. Is Tom Brooks on your Christmas card list?
He's cool actually. Tom and I were partners for the Pro-Am race in Sydney, which I don't think ever got televised. But that was memorable for me because I was stood in front of a crowd getting booed in Sydney because I was the New Zealander and he was the Englishman. And we'd just finished ahead of the Australians. So he's really cool, Tom. He does a lot of stuff, doesn't he?
He does. He's bloke, isn't he?
So I said that in reference to, I don't know if you remember, do you watch back the commentary of your races ever?
Are you going to reference the fact that he continually called me Australian? Is that
no.
He did that. So
there's a line in one of the I can't remember which one it was. It might have been the Nurburgring. And he says, I think the camera gets panned to you, and he says, "There's Cy Bishop. He's one of our elder competitors." And then Jimmy covered him on the side and said, "I think you've just taken yourself off Simon's Christmas card list." So, what do you have to say to that? What's your kite back?
I do remember that. I heard that while I was racing because when that's something that you kind of don't realize is that because of how you are on the stage, it was always Toyota and Mercedes right next to each other, which is always funny given the rivalry that happened, which I'm sure we'll talk about. And next to us is the commentary team, and the headphones that you have on are so loud that you can't hear anything really. But because I was next to them, you could hear them, and I was just like, "Oh, come on, mate, that's not nice."
You heard it.
Classic.
I can't believe you heard it.
Yeah.
That.
Yeah. It was, well, he's not wrong though, because I think that there was a guy from Finland in his 40s, and it was like me and Matt were like the next oldest people, Matt Simmons, and we were 30 at the time. It's a young man's game nowadays.
It really is. It really is.
Some of the kids coming out of Europe are insane, aren't they?
I was really impressed by Takari. Wasn't he? He was like 16 and he's like performing at his best.
Smoking
what is he now? 17 or 18 or something?
I think he may have just recently gone 18. I heard someone, but I don't know.
It is interesting though, talking about age in a non-disparaging way, that racing esports is more or less the only esport I can think of in which you could have a 30-year-old competing with the 18-year-olds.
Yeah.
Because the burnout on the other games is so high. I think it was like the oldest person to do League of Legends is like 22 or something like that.
Oh wow!
Just because of the schedules they have, as well as the fact that you've always got this pool of people that are turning 18 and are just able to react faster than you. It's insane, but it's cool for racing because I mean you see it in real racing, which I think is another strength of racing esports and like indeed Gran Turismo, is that NASCAR's average age of the winners, all the best guys are all above 35, you know? And in Formula 1, aside from Max Verstappen, you've got Lewis Hamilton, who's, 37. And
how old is Kimi Räikkönen?
Oh,
he would have been near 40, right?
Yeah, he would have been about 40.
Yeah. Definitely one of the plus sides that come out of the COVID pandemic was definitely the rise of sim racing. You had the likes of the V8 supercars, which had their E-Series on iRacing. You had Formula 1 had their virtual series, NASCAR had their virtual series, IndyCar, all the major motorsports sort of putting the spotlight on the virtual, and it did there were people, this isn't like the real thing, and then there were people, wow, this is awesome, but it definitely put a spotlight on that wouldn't have been there otherwise.
Drew enough eyes to make a difference for sure.
And I think you'll find there were a lot of new people, new to sim racing, who, across the age range. I mean, there's, I don't know if you guys have heard, there's a group on, I think, GT Planet called the Old Geezers Racing Club or something. It's particularly older people, and they meet up and they race, or they practice for different, events coming up.
A team that's in the Oceania region called OGR. You guys might recognise that. That stands for Old Guys Racing.
Yes.
Oh, did it?
Yeah, that's what it stands for.
Oh, I never knew that.
I raced one of them in the
Very
Supers
cool.
earlier. So,
Yeah, they've been turning up to a couple of championship races. They usually stick to the dailies, I think. But
I see OGR Race Tech. I've seen him in like Top Split.
Yeah.
There's a couple of them that make their way in. They do
Baldy Ovo.
Yep, they do get a pretty high DR from jamming a lot of dailies. They're kind of on that side of the sports spectrum. But yeah, that's a specific. I presume they're all middle-aged, just down to that name, or it could be ironic. I don't know. But I would say, based on that,
Tom Brooks probably thinks that I should be in that team. Based off that.
Even to get Christmas cards from you?
No, funnily enough. Well, have you seen the Gran Turismo Christmas cards that they sent out? Have you seen those?
No, I have not.
The World Tour guys the people that qualify for World Tours get Christmas cards from the Polyphony team. They're quite cool. I'll take a photo of mine. But,
do you get money? Do you get money inside?
Oh no! Oh heavens!
Is that not the one that I think Andrew posted his one on Twitter? I think, is that the same one? Yeah,
it's got pictures of all the cars and the people that are in it. And
that's cool.
That's cool.
That's such a good little souvenir. That
it's just a little touch that it probably takes quite a bit of doing to get Christmas cards sent out to everyone who qualifies for those events.
In the world,
but it's obviously such a little thing for each individual person to receive. It shows that they actually care about their competitors quite a lot.
Oh yeah. Going back to what you said, Nathan. Yeah, I think there was this degree of acceptance for sim racing. And there was always this point of like, oh, it's fake racing, and people were like, yes, but the point is it can be entertaining too. You know what I mean? Like, nobody is thinking that iRacing is all of a sudden going to beat Formula 1 in terms of popularity, but it doesn't mean that iRacing can't be fun. And something that I don't know whether you guys have experienced as well, whether the people that watch your streams or indeed like your friends and family that watch you, like all my colleagues would never watch any car racing at all. They'd never watch the supercars, and they'd not watch they wouldn't watch Formula One, but they enjoy watching sim racing. And it's interesting. I think with sim racing you can kind of have, although not so much with the 1x fuel wear and tyres that we've currently got going on, but you can create these scenarios that create really interesting races, and you can make them repeatable. So that's what I think in some ways GT7's missing at the moment, is that like people that are trying to create content like yourselves, it's hard to do. Like take this week for example with Monza, it's 1x.
God,
how do you create content there? So the way so but if that was
a shocking race,
but if you make that 5x tyre wear and you have to use 2 types of tyres,
give us overtake,
day
night transition, bit of rain,
or even
I don't know.
Basic things like mandatory pit stops. Like maybe you don't have to change tyres, but you just have to take a mandatory stop. Something like that.
I actually think in some ways a mandatory stop, but you don't actually need to stop in terms of the tyre wear. I think in some ways that's better than when there's like 2 enforced compounds. You get everyone pitting on the same lap, whereas if it's just a
you've got to stop at some point,
if it's just a mandated stop, you can stop at the end of lap 1, you can stop at the end of the final lap, you can stop when you see you're catching up to a big pack of traffic, and then you can end up jumping them all.
Because that would change the dynamic completely for that race C, wouldn't it?
Yeah, because you can get out of dirty,
Yep. And so it's not that hard, I would have thought, but I mean, it is what it is. But those kind of being able to have those repeatable races really make it interesting for those people that wouldn't otherwise watch Formula One. I mean, Formula One this year is a bit of a unique one, and the race has been good. But like I'm old enough to remember the days in which Michael Schumacher was on the podium every single race in 2002, and you'd get up at midnight and you'd be like, okay, well, I already know who's going to win this race. And nowadays people are spoiled on that, and like I don't think they realise how good it is, because the last 5 years have been dire.
So there's obviously there was a lot of outcry when Merc was dominant, and Hamilton was winning all the races. Everyone was like, "Oh, we don't want Hamilton winning all the races. We want racing." Was there that sort of attitude when Schumacher was winning all the time?
Oh yeah, people hated.
Oh, there was.
Yeah. Oh yeah, people hated Ferrari and they hated Schumacher, and then all of a sudden Vettel started winning and everyone hated him. And now all of a sudden he's like their favourite person on Twitter. It's just so funny, isn't it? At the moment,
in a lot of ways, I think it definitely depends on the angle you take towards that. I personally didn't really. I didn't mind that Hamilton won all the time. I wouldn't mind if the same person won all the time. I think, you want to see the racing, but I think there is something to be said in a competition, because we have to remember, like motorsport, it's a competition. You do the best you can. If you can show up to every race meeting for, I don't know, let's say in Mercedes' case, 8 years, and just consistently have one of the best cars on the grid, be so dominant, there's definitely an element of, you making an impression. People are like, wow, how are you able to do this all the time when you got teams at the back that can barely struggle to get out of Q1? So if you take that sort of approach towards someone winning all the time, where you can just be impressed by the amount of skill, basically, that they have, I think you can enjoy it that way. But then, I would say the majority of people are probably like, I'm sick of seeing the same person win. But it's just the way it goes, I think we had a very good title fight last year in most ways, and looks like to be another good year this year.
It's interesting too, because you can angle that about Gran Turismo, can't you? Because a lot of people with the impending GT World Series, whenever that eventually gets launched, you're going to have to make a call, aren't you? You're going to have to try and choose which manufacturer you're going to go for. And there are several right now in which you might have no chance of qualifying for an event, but you're going to have a car that's going to be so good that you could win races in your splits. You know what I mean? And you go, well, do you, like, for example, the Group 4 race at Trial Mountain the other day? Remember the test?
Is the one, isn't it?
Yeah. So I chose Subaru because I thought, I haven't got much time to practice, so I'll choose the fastest thing. And I'm racing with a Kagi, and I've done no practice. And because he's in the Chevrolet, I'm like, well, it tells you everything. It's just like if Mercedes and Formula One was the same. I feel like it's hard because, particularly at the top level, this is actually something that I think is quite interesting with the GT, and I think causes like a lot of the burnout for some of the competitors. Is that when you're in that top split and you're constantly racing for a spot in those finals, you're no longer racing for fun. It's like you're turning up and you have to be on your A game, and you can't just turn up with no practice.
Yeah.
I actually wanted to ask you about that, Simon. What was that schedule like coming up to when you qualified for your World Tours? Like, were you planning on qualifying and you put in a load of practice, or did you sort of just play normally and you happen to find yourself sort of near the front all the time? Like, what was that like? What was that schedule and, balancing your life out to achieve what you did?
Well, that's hard, right?
Yeah.
Because I work full time, so you're working 9 to 5, and you've got to find the time to race. And back in those days, when it was just Australia and New Zealand competing against each other, the first split was like 7 and the last split was like 11 o'clock. Mm-hmm. And so I'd walk home from work and I'd get home at 6:30 and I'd hop straight on the rig and then be racing. And you'd be racing for 4 hours, and then you'd finish the night and you'd be up the next day for work. Adam, you know about that with your current schedule. It's really challenging to then have if you wanted to go out for dinner with your partner, you can't. And back in those days, like 8 of 10 rounds counted, so you couldn't really miss so many.
Wow!
You didn't really have too much
bloody hell.
Drop rounds. Yeah.
Particularly if it was a good round for your car, because you had to do well. I remember one race was I was up in Auckland doing the Project Cars tournament, if you remember those days with Let's Play Live, and Craig Murphy was up there doing the commentary. That was actually probably a career highlight, by the way. I was doing a Twitch stream with Craig Murphy. That was pretty cool. Well, because I watched him growing up.
Better than using SuperGT. Me.
Hang on a minute.
Don't tell Steve. Shh. Was that I had to borrow someone's G29, and we had to set up a wheel in the Sky Tower on one of their monitors, and do the race from the Sky Tower, because I couldn't afford to miss the race, so I literally had to do it. And that's just hard. Nowadays it's a bit easier, but there is good and bad things with the schedule. And one funny thing about that Sky Tower thing is that have either of you guys gone to the Sky Tower recently?
Yep, I've been there. So one of our mates, Dub2, who you might know, qualified for the LPL for the WRC championship, and same thing. It was all in the Sky Tower, and I think I have an idea of the setup you're talking about. Yeah,
when I was racing, they do the skydive things off the top, and the way that I was facing, people were just flying past my window. They're going, down trying to race.
That's amazing.
I'll tell you what, the amount of, I get so distracted, if my phone lights up or if the neighbour turns on a tap and it vibrates the pipes, I'm like, shut up, I'm trying to concentrate. But imagine actual humans descending out the window.
I want to know what your thought was the first time someone went by. Did you for a moment think that someone had fallen?
You're just like, what the hell's that? What the hell was that? Because you're racing and then you just look up and someone just goes whoosh past you.
They don't. I've never done the skydive thing, and I probably never will. But don't they hang there for a bit first before they drop?
Sort of. They kind of push you off, and you kind of plummet, and then you kind of fall a wee bit down. Then you kind of just are suspended. But it was like one of those weird things that I just remember.
Hilarious.
But
I wanted to ask basically the same question as Smoke about your world tour. Well, not your world tour, but your championship mindset. But instead, it's about your cars. So, manufacturer series. Obviously, you've driven for Toyota. I believe you've driven for Ferrari. There's been a few other bits and pieces. Are you the sort of person who waits until the schedule's out and looks at the tracks and weighs up the pros and cons before you pick, or do you just sort of go, "Oh man, I really love Toyota. I'm going to make it work"?
There's kind of two schools of thought with that one as well. The Toyota one was really interesting because because they're official partners, they obviously were very popular at the time. And they were never very slow, will be how I put that. And you have to make this conscious decision where it could have been easier to qualify for all the events by choosing a different manufacturer. But when you make it to the event, have you got any chance of winning? And you go, well, what are you there for? Are you there to try and win, or are you there to make it to the World Tour? And with Toyota, I kind of felt like, well, this gives me a chance to win these tours or race at the front of these tours. And so I kind of challenged myself for that. Obviously, Oceania got very fortunate with how it was easier to qualify for our region for sure. But nowadays, I think the mindset is different. Now that it's a lot harder to qualify, it's like a death sentence choosing one of those top manufacturers because, how are you going to beat a Kage and a Mazda? And how are you going to beat Miyazono and a Subaru? And I mean, if you can beat Miyazono and a Subaru, then you probably deserve to be racing at the front of the field. But I was very fortunate to have very, very good teammates the entire time. And that's something that I don't think people realise, is that you just learn so much from them. Like Yamanaka, the first time I watched him race, you can watch them race on the time trials, and you can watch them race in the races themselves and watch the replays over and over, but until you see what they do in person, it's insane. He taught me so much, and the person that I think is the most amazing person to watch live is Hizal. The world,
man's machine.
I remember the world final, the Oceanian brigade was sat right behind him, and just what he was doing was just next level. He wasn't even playing the same game as us. If you remember, he won Interlagos by a mile.
Masterclass.
And I just remember that he didn't make a single mistake, and just the way that he would be able to adjust the fuel with the dials on the wheel, and he'd be able to adjust it in such a way so that he saved fuel, but it also meant that he didn't get oversteer out of the corners. So it was like his method of doing traction controls to change the fuel mode.
I've thought that, but I've never put it into practice.
I'm the same. Was he super intense with it? He's turning out of a corner, and then he turns it up, and then right as it grips up, he turns it back down, while you're exiting. Are you? Oh my God.
So turn one for Interlagos, I remember he would brake, and he would put it straight into mode 6, and then on the exit of the corner, he would be able to put it to 4. And then as he gets through the next part of the CNRS, he'd just be able to put it back down to 1.
That's insane.
And the whole time he's hitting the apexes, and he's absolutely perfect, and he's making no mistakes.
Big brain boy.
I can do that on the Fanatec now, interestingly, because
I'm actually blown away.
Yeah. And so what he was doing was he was saving fuel, but he wasn't having to run mode 2 on the straights and stuff like that. So he wasn't losing the lap speed. And when I saw that,
certainly
when I was watching that, I was like,
those little gains that make all the difference. And I think the other thing that's easy to not, obviously people who haven't been to the World Tour won't think about this, but when you're there, when you're racing, there's so much going on around you. There's cameras, there's people, there's the example that comes to mind is Likovsky versus Miyazono, and that entire lap. If you watch the cameras, the footage of them driving, there's people around them, there's cameras, pretty much in their face, and that they
the cheering. You could hear the crowd on the broadcast.
And I know. Si said that the headphones are real loud, but there's surely you hear some of that.
You'd get stuff in your peripheral vision as well, wouldn't you?
Everything that's going on. So my point is, there has to be, especially with Hizal, like you're saying, there has to be just this, just phase out, just block out everything, focus on the task at hand, while, like you said, managing the fuel, managing the grip. Apex it's just, you have to be built different to succeed.
You actually do. I've always said, if by some miracle I ever make it to a world tour, I'll be 30 seconds off the back of the field. I don't care. I'm happy to be there.
If you ever make it to a world tour, that's your face reveal done for you, mate. So
there you go. I wouldn't have a choice, would I? I'd have to ask Gran Turismo to shout me out and get me to 500 subs. There'd be literally no other.
No, you just ask
other choice.
Ask them to put you at that rig in the far corner, the one that's shrouded in shadow.
Yeah.
And the 16th driver is, well, we don't know who he is, but he's over there. So
some smoke guy. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's everybody says that, right? Everybody's like, "Oh, I'm a first world tour. I'm just gonna." But when you get there, trust me, you're gonna try. And particularly with manufacturer series because it's not just your fate that is riding on it; it's the two other guys.
Yeah, that's true too. There's a team game that needs to be played. Does that happen?
Oh, yeah.
Like, is there much in the ways like you've seen it a couple of times where they're all in comms and they're talking to each other? Do you get much of that?
Our team never really talked much, but that's because Yamanaka spoke very little English and I spoke very little Japanese. But we would talk pre-race, we'd do strategy, but I'm not the kind of guy that likes to have a chat. I kind of have a fair idea about what's going on in the race. I know what tyres people are on, and I know what fuel number I have to hit, so I don't need someone to tell me that kind of stuff. But there are some guys that would talk the entire race.
Because most of those races being 3 drivers with 3 different sets of tyres, weren't they? So it's pretty much just, you're on softs, you're on mediums, you're on hards, make it work.
I'll happily be the one lap on hard guy.
Make that decision, by the way, because obviously it would have been different each time. What was the process you guys went through to decide your strategy and who drove on what tyres? Was it generally just the fastest guy gets the softs and the slowest guy gets the hards, or how did you work it out? That's
a good question, actually, and I think I would ask you kind of the same. Like, there are inherently people prefer certain tyres. Like, for me, I actually really don't like the soft tyres at the time. Now I don't really mind them so much. At the time, I didn't mind using the hard tyres because it was kind of like a known quantity for me. And so I basically did all the hard runs for our team. But there were definitely some people that were just like, let's put the slowest guy on the hards, which I don't necessarily think that works all that well because you're kind of compromising and stuff, right? You're going to lose a lot of time in that. You really need your soft tyre runner to run really well.
I was gonna say that, like, there's definitely 2 different directions. You can put the slowest guy on the hards, they probably get the shortest stint, but they got the worst tyre. Would you maybe want to give them the softs, help them with their pace, and then the fast guy gets the hard tyres, can maybe do a bit of a better job at making it work?
But that's the thing, right? Because if you put the best guy on the hards, you're minimising your losses at that point.
Yeah. It's interesting.
And you can see that. You can see that happen in lots of the races. And like for me, I don't really necessarily like for me, most cars I don't like the medium tyres at all. It's either the softs or the hards for me. The medium tyres I just feel like they're just nothing for most cars. Like for the Supra race the other day on the mediums, it was just it was like it would turn but then it wouldn't. I was like, I'd rather have it on softs and make it turn really well, or hards and not have it turn at all. Yeah. And you just
a load of understeer with a load of tyre wear.
You're not a fan of the Goldilocks option, then?
Oh no.
Medium tyres mid confirmed.
I think we've alluded to it long enough. I think it's time to start actually talking about it. Germany, 2019, that race, that lap.
On the hard tyres.
Probably
one of the most famous "I'm on the hard tyres" moment in GT history. Talk to us about that incident.
Tell us about it.
That's an interesting time, definitely, because that was my second event, and we went there, and we the first few races we went pretty good. If you remember, it was like 1, 2, 3 races, and then the third race set the grid for the 4th in those days. And I remember that it was really hard because you turn up to these events and you look to your right and there's Mikail, and you look to your left and there's Fraga, and then you look in front of you and there's like Cody Latkovsky, and you're like, oh, what am I doing here? And in practice for the Monza race, which was my first race, I went fastest on my first lap, and it was like this just massive moment of just like, oh no, I can do this, like I belong here.
I think if I recall correctly.
What was that?
You got a really good result in that Monza race, didn't you?
Yeah. I could have gone better, but my strategy was always just finish, because you saw a lot of people didn't. And
if you turned around in the first corner, if I remember that one correctly. Yeah,
well, Lexus won the first 2 races, and then got turned around in the first corner and started at the back for the final race, and that cost them ultimately. And so we entered that final at the Nurburgring starting 6th, and everybody ahead of us started on hard tyres, I think, and we chose softs, and we might have been like the only one that did. But we talked about it, and we're like, if we can get ahead, we'll just be able to be gone, and then they're just going to have to try and catch up past us. Now, unfortunately for me, I didn't realise at the time that I was going to be the one getting caught at the end, which, not great. That's an interesting video to watch back too. Because there were cameras in my face the entire time. And
it would have been.
Yes. They told the story very well on the commentary for that one.
They did, yeah.
I'm just looking at the starting order for that race. So first 5 guys were all mediums, Toyota on softs, and then the back was sort of like mostly hards. There was one other guy on soft, one other guy on medium. So yeah.
Where did Mercedes start?
Mercedes started 3rd.
Ooh.
Yeah.
I think I remember seeing Toyota on softs, and I was like, oh, at the Nurburgring, that can't be a very good idea.
Yeah, the only other ones that started softs were Lexus, and they were dead last. So
yeah, okay.
Yeah, everybody thought we were idiots.
Did you have to pick your tyre before the whole competition started, or did you pick it right before the race?
You had to pick it. That's a good question. You either had to pick it before the race or before the race itself. I think nowadays
it was on softs then.
Yeah, because they probably would have thought they were going to be first.
Yeah, okay, well that makes sense.
Yeah, that created strategic problems as well. But that was why it was so crucial to get the car to the finish. But yeah, people thought we were stupid because they thought we'd waste our soft tyres. But Yamanaka was amazing. Like, he saved them behind the other people, and then on that second lap, was able to just run away from the rest of the field. And so there's this moment where I'm sat there and I suddenly realise what's happening in front of me. And then all of a sudden they start talking about it in the commentary, and I'm like, oh crap, here we go.
Showtime.
And
could you hear them?
Oh yeah, because I didn't have the headphones on at that point.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah.
And so it was this odd moment for me because I exited the pits, and what they didn't talk about in the commentary was that we didn't refuel our car in the stop, so we had to save fuel. And so that's why if you watch that first lap, Cody takes like 4 seconds out of me on the GP circuit alone. It's because I'm just saving fuel at that point to make it so I can hit a number. And then I remember I exited the, where the GP circuit joins the Nordschleife, and I was like, everybody would kill for this opportunity. This is what everybody would like to be. They'd be in the situation where it's like, you're in the lead. It's entirely on you to come through like this. And you can see people in... Oh, yeah. And you see that in all kinds of sport, right? Like, it's like in the NBA finals, if a guy's got to hit a shot to win for the team, and like, more often than not, like, the top guys, because they can get in that zone, they can make that shot. Like Steph Curry for the Warriors, for example, was like automatic at the 3-point line when it mattered. And you can see Tom Brady for the Patriots and now the Bucks. If it's the game-winning drive and there's 2 minutes to go, he's just got it every time. You just know he's got it. And it used to be a bit like that with One Cup in the supercars. Like, you just knew that he was going to be able to pull it out. And I sat there and I was like, well, okay, this is a moment where I'm either going to be remembered for winning or remembered for crashing off out of the lead. And I was like, well, I know which one of those I wanted to be. And so as the lap went on, because I was on the hards, they were slow, but they never wore out at all, whereas Cody's on the second lap of softs. And I knew that by the time he got to around, the 3/4 mark of the track, then our pace would be kind of, like merging, you know what I mean? Like, he was going to come back to me. It was just a matter of me not crashing off. And then, we got to the straight. And that's an interesting video if you haven't seen it, because Cody's super intently, like, gripping the wheel and looking dead straight ahead. And there's 2 camera crews, one's looking at him and one's looking at me, which, going back to what you were saying before about the cameras, and there's, like, stage lights on me, and there's the people literally, they stand, like, right next to you. So they're directly in your vision. And I look across, you can see me just look across at his screen. And the reason is because I look at his tyres and how much fuel he has left, and I'm like, oh, I can do this. And so back in those days, the Supra was very fast in the straight line, as you can see from the fact he just didn't catch me down the straight. And I thought, well, all I can do is just try and block the best I can. And then he turned into me on the way down the chute. I was like, oh, okay, I can play like this. And then, the rest is history, is it not? I'm sure you're going to ask me what I think about what transpired next.
So there was a moment where you guys were coming down the straight and you actually drove into each other a couple of times, and it looked like it was kind of the ping pong physics coming into play. But who turned into who? What happened there? You say he touched you. Do you think he touched you first, and you just stood your ground and made sure you were only giving him the car?
Did you give a tiny bit back?
I don't think it was me. Put it that way. But I wasn't going to get pushed off the track.
So the incident itself, what happened exactly on the way in? Because we only saw so many angles from the event. Obviously, it ended up being a racing incident. based on Steward's verdict. But from the driver's seat, what do you think actually happened?
It's interesting. Cody probably has different views on this, but it was really interesting. I wish they had released the angles that we saw at the event, because the build on the game in which they use at World Tours has got so much camera options. It's basically like escapes mode in the race, so you can use whatever angle you want and you can have it. So they just watched from directly above, which is the best way to see it.
Directly above?
That's brilliant.
What a cool angle.
So you can kind of see, and so...
I'll tell you what, if they did a video, if they did a YouTube video that was just your POV or his POV, or even both, I'd definitely watch that.
Yeah, 100%.
It's basically what happened was I got on the inside curve and he went to the outside, and it's hard to say, but I think he turned in too early, and whether he hit me or not, I didn't feel anything. So that's why when I'm driving towards the straight, I'm like, sweet as, because I'm like, oh, he took himself off. I had no idea. And then obviously he shared some words with me at the end. But in the video, watching it back, because it was 10 minutes of people looking at footage over and over and over, because there's a live stewarding team, and Kaz was down there apparently intently watching.
That's so cool.
And I'm still there I don't know what's going on here. He crashed himself off. And the basically because the build is all on a LAN and it's not over the internet, there's no lag hits or anything like that. You can't have that happen.
You can't use that as an excuse, no.
Yeah. Basically he just got really close to me and just couldn't make the corner.
You don't think there was contact at all?
No. Yeah, that's right.
Wow.
That's
it was we were completely side by side, and I don't know whether there was some element of the game doing it, but the thing that I think they would have penalised me if I'd run all the way to the exit curb. If you watch it, I hold the inside because I just knew that I couldn't space. Yeah,
I thought that when I watched it.
There was.
I thought that when I watched it, I was like
on the outside, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was. I thought, well, you have to give him the racing room, right? And I think I gave him enough room. It's just because he turned in too early. I think he just couldn't. He couldn't get the line. If he had gone a little bit later and turned in later, I think he would have been still on my outside and he would have out-dragged me because of the soft tyres. But yeah, that was interesting because all of a sudden, for me, I'm just some guy from New Zealand that flew over thinking, sweet, I'm at the 24 hours of Nurburgring. And then all of a sudden you're thrust into the eyes of the entire GT community. And that's good and bad because my mentions in my phone in my pocket is because there's a 45-second delay. So when the race finished, I was like, okay, sweet as. And then my phone just blew up from people texting me and the Twitter. But you know what the internet's like. You just go to bed and you wake up to a sea of both people saying you're a wanker and a prick, and you get a sea of people saying that you're a legend. And I'm like, oh god, I didn't sign up for this.
You got to deal with that as a celebrity, eh?
That's just part of it, eh? So you mentioned that Cody had some words to you afterwards. What were they?
You can actually hear them on one of the videos. There's audio. They've got our radio comms. He basically just said I took him out.
Ooh.
Fair enough.
There's actually kind of parallels to that in the Sydney World Tour, I think. In that final corner, right? He turns into Miyazono and runs himself wide. And if he had have held himself out wide, he would have got a better run and might have been Mia's over the line. Which was interesting, I thought.
Trail X29.
Yeah. It was the same thing, I thought.
I don't know. I'd have to probably look back at that one again. I remember it was obviously very intense, and there was.
I know there was contact between Latkovsky and Miyazono on the way into the final corner.
Yeah.
But it's unclear if Miyazono turned in too late or Cody turned in too early. But maybe you're right, Si. Maybe it was a similar attempt at an overtake from the outside, and the same thing was his undoing, perhaps.
Yeah, people made out this kind of rivalry between me and him, but not really. He was pretty determined when he came to New York to beat us, and they won. So, but he was
a long time after, and patch it up or anything like that, or did you guys just kind of forget about it between each other?
Oh, sort of. We never really talked about it. Other people always try to get us to talk about it, but One of those things.
Kind of like
Decent
kind of
point
like Atom.
right now.
Kind of like Atom, yeah.
Yeah,
With
something
now,
that's on
now
a
like,
podcast. Yeah, but he was like the ultimate competitor. So
we'd now like to introduce our surprise second guest, Cody Nicola.
yes, Cody, that's good.
He's actually been here listening the whole time.
Yeah. No, he was the ultimate competitor, right? Like
He's
Yeah.
there to do a job. He's there to win, and you really got to admire his determination because he never set foot on the track, or rather drove onto the track. He never showed up accepting anything less. Like, he was gutted when he lost.
He was there to win. Yeah.
You could see it. You could see it after the race. He was just sitting in the seat there. He was just gutted. It was just.
It was, and the other thing was he always stepped up at those events. I think that's something that people don't realise is that, like, for me, I can't time trial for shit in this game. Like, I'm never in the top 10 on the leaderboards. But
Neither.
but I'm like, I don't know. Give me a seat at a world tour, and I can match most people.
Wow,
That's the thing you watch.
that's interesting.
There are some people
rise
that
up to that
as well. That some people turn up to the world events, and some people take a step backwards. And
I feel like I'd be a backwards guy.
I know until you go, mate. But yeah, Cody was always at the very front of the World Tour events and challenging for the very top step in the Nations Cup. But I heard people say he really steps up at the World Tours. But I've never ever seen him not perform at the very top regionally, whether it's Asia or Oceania. So in my experience, I see him as just great all round. He's always been the very best. But was that not the case at some point? Was he not quite as dominant as he was in 2020?
Well, sort of. Like in the 2019 season, we'd be able to race with him in the races that we had, and you can see that in the top 16 superstar races that they televised back then. He doesn't lead from the front in every single one of those races. He wins most of them, but at those world tours, there were no people in our region that could get close to him. It was. Yeah, and that was an interesting moment too, because that was the exact thing that Gran Turismo wanted from a world tour, was like a bit of controversy, a bit of last corner action stuff, and so that just got blown up all over the place.
They love a bit of it, don't they? They love a bit of the controversy.
That's where the views are, man.
They analysed that Eau Rouge incident between, was it Hizal and Fraga? Was Fraga like lifting off the throttle so Hizal wouldn't get a tow or something? I remember they analysed that till the cows come home.
He lost his run. Usually,
that was an interesting time. Yeah,
I think just motorsports in general is like, obviously there's a theatrical side to motorsports. There's a showmanship side, and I think there's always a lot of categories like to do the whole heroes and villains thing. Like, I mean, you had Scaife and Ingle, you got Hamilton and Verstappen, you got all these. There's always going to be the heroes and the villains, and to one person they might be heroes, to the other they might be villains, or vice versa. But that dynamic is probably one of the more common aspects of any good motorsport, of any racing situation.
It definitely keeps people watching, because if you sort of begin to get engrossed in that rivalry, you find which driver you support and you go, oh, it's so close, I've got to watch the next race, see what happens, got to watch the next race.
It was interesting from my perspective too, because it's not something you ever want to sign up for. And so when I come back to the GT, and this is still true today, like, people will just they know who I am, and they're just, I've got a target on my back. And I'm sure you've seen numerous incidents of people wiping me out.
I think I wiped you out at Spa recently. Your car flew up into the air. Bloody hell!
I wanted to actually touch on this a little bit and sort of talk about the whole, because in the previous episode we sort of talked about how Gran Turismo 7, the way they've gone about the presentation of the game, anybody who's new to the franchise, like, for example, if you're an Italian player, you've never played Gran Turismo before, you see Valerio Gallo, and he's an Italian driver, he's your sort of national man, right? And likewise, if you're a Brazilian, you see Igor Fraga, and oh wow, he's a Brazilian, you have that relatability. You're the New Zealand guy. So what's that been like, being basically the face of New Zealand? I mean, Matthew McEwen he's in there as an AI, but your mug is in the game, so what's that been like?
That is, in some ways, probably the best part, I think.
Yeah.
Because I played Gran Turismo 2 in 1999, and I used to play it with my brother, and you play through the entire series, and I'm sure it's like the same for most of you guys. Although, Atom, I think you started with Sport, didn't you? Or did you play the other ones before it?
Yeah, I dabbled in 4 when I was very young, but Sport was where I was like, I want to try to be a racer.
Yeah.
I'm the same. It was Sport for me as well.
Yeah, it was like this moment of, like, you've made it. You know what I mean? At that point, it was really, and I didn't realize how few people were actually going to be involved in that capacity. Because, like, obviously, we all got photos taken of us at one of the tours.
I've heard Tichney talk about this.
So that was in race suits, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was in race suits. Yeah, and the race suits at the time were red. I think were they white? No, they're white.
They were red.
And they're red in game.
Weren't they?
Oh, they're red in game, white in real life.
Yeah. So when I was playing I've got a photo of it. When I had to be really careful because we could not take photos whatsoever of anything that was happening. We all knew that they had taken photos, but we had no idea about whether we were going to be in the game. And
the context was
yeah, and you guys will know that I don't appear until like right at the end of the game. And so I'm sat there playing through the game. I'm like, okay, I've seen everybody else from our region apart from me now. I'm like, shit.
So you didn't actually know if you were in the game or not.
No, you went.
You don't have to. Don't name names here if you don't want to. Are there people who you know got their photo taken who don't appear in the game? If you don't know, that's all right. I was just curious.
Well, Cody doesn't, but I don't think he signed the waiver. I think that Andrew Brooks might have been the only notable absence, but I think he got added in as a patch recently. But anyway, I'm watching all my colleagues in red suits, and I'm like, shit, did they take other photos and I missed out on this? And no, I turned up in a red suit, so they've obviously just done a Photoshop job. But that was really, really cool. And people come up to me and talk to me about that, which is just insane, I think. I have people that I used to go to school with, and they're like, oh, I just saw you in the game. I'm like, yeah.
I was going to ask crazy about that. Like, that's what I was getting to. I was going to ask about is, have you been recognised? Have you
yeah.
I mean, you said about obviously having a target on your back because people recognise you. Is that sort of thing?
In the game, yeah. People try and take me out mostly. I mean, that's how it goes.
Case in point, R4M Smokescreen.
Mine was an accident, but I still posted it. So,
I mean, yeah, most of the things that I see of people of my avatar in game is either me taking them out or them taking me out, which is really, really funny. But in real life, people come into where I work and they just come up and they're like, "Oh, yeah, that guy that plays GT." I'm like, "Yeah, you know." And
really, you get recognised out and about.
You've been in the newspaper a couple of times, haven't you?
Yeah. Yep.
Well, I don't know.
Oh wow!
I don't know if you guys know, but his workplace actually shouted him out on Facebook. They were like, "Hey, our employee Cy Bishop is in this game."
Yep.
Oh,
and
cool.
yeah, and that's pretty unusual. You can't prepare for that.
Yeah. How often does that come about?
Oh, less than it used to. It used to be basically weekly.
Goals, man.
Wow.
And then nowadays, it's happened twice in the last week. Like, there was a guy that, I sell stuff on Trade Me, and he came along and picked up something I'd sold, and he was like, "Oh, you're that guy that plays GT." I'm like, "Yeah, that's me." It is funny too because we're coming.
Do they ask for an autograph? Have you ever autographed someone's copy? Oh,
yeah,
really? That's cool.
True. So there's a Cy Bishop copy of Gran Turismo going around. Oh,
wow. That'd be worth a fortune.
Is it worth more or is it worth less? Nobody knows.
Is it worth less?
But it is pretty cool. And we're coming up on 3 years since Nurburgring now, which is pretty crazy to think about. That it's almost been basically 3 years since the World Tour was sort of a thing. It seems like it was like last year that we did the online stuff, but it's ages ago. But that is really cool, and I think that it's hard going back to what I said about you the Nurburgring, you win, you come home. All of a sudden, everybody looks at you like the benchmark, and going back to what I said about how having fun racing. I can't, if I turn up to a GT World Series thing, I just know that people are like, oh, I beat Sidawg. You know what I mean? Like, they're like, oh, he's the guy that I want to beat in this race. And that's not easy for me because I don't really want to have a race where someone's like racing me like it's for a world title. Sometimes I want to just race around and have fun. And that's quite tricky if someone's very aggressively racing you. I'm sure you've got
to get into a race with the people you know and you're used to racing. You know,
exactly.
They're sort of developed a small community of drivers in the Oceania region that were regularly in the top 16 superstars and things like that. So you're always racing the same people. That would have been alright. Eh?
Yeah. You gain an understanding of how people race, and a lot of us were already friends, so it was kind of like it was easy, right? And even if we go back to the Cody thing, like Cody and I never crashed into each other on the track, ever. But everybody thinks we had this massive rivalry. It was like, well, most of the time he was like 5 seconds up the road, so it made it a bit hard. But there are obviously notable exceptions who we shan't mention. But the on by and large, people are really good. But I mean, like last night in dailies, some guy wiped me out, and they were like, "Oh, that was your fault, Sidawg." I'm like, "Okay, cool." I mean, the fact that you didn't brake, and I turned in was definitely my fault. Yeah.
Is it even a daily race if you don't engage in some stupid rivalry with someone?
Exactly right.
Yeah. It's just par for the course.
You
have a day of daily racing, you make an arch enemy.
Always that one guy that thinks daily races are his ticket to Monaco 2022.
Oh, yeah, and they go, oh, it's that guy that won the world tour. I'm going to show him what I can do, bro. I'm like, bro, I'm just trying to race. I'm tuned up.
Quad Moto, mate. I still remember you.
Well, like last night, for example, because I'm doing car roulette, and obviously, if you're trying to compete, you're in the Beetle or the WRX, right, in Monza.
Yeah.
I'm in the Lamborghini Huracan. And these people are racing me like it's for the world tour. I'm like, does it look like I'm taking this seriously? I'm in the Huracan.
Yeah, driving the hardest car in the
track. Every time I brake, I spin. It's like, give me a break, man. Don't like run me off the road on the straight, and don't try and like push me into the sand. Just
we did have a night. I think Atom, you might remember this. We did a night back in GT Sport where I think it was Atom, myself, Smoke, you might have been there, Tez, and a few others, and we all basically decided to do daily races, no qualifying. So we're all starting at the back, and we're all. I can't remember what track it was though, but it was. I think it might have been Bathurst. But anyway, and the amount of people that will basically fight you for like 13th place or 14th place, like it's not even for the win, but to them that's. That's just how they drive.
People just come in and they think they're the best, and they think like, oh, I'm not going to bother waiting for an opportunity to pass you. I can just pass you.
It's definitely that. I feel like that definitely is a skill that develops as you sort of become more acquainted with seeing other people do well, because you see other people do well and you're like, okay, what did they do? They didn't pass him there when he had the opportunity to. He waited for the straight, or he was going to pit in the next lap or whatever. So that kind of thing definitely comes as you get more experience. But I think it still comes back to the idea that you have to want to improve to be able to pick up stuff like that. Whereas if you're just playing the game, you're like, oh, I'm going to fight this guy for 12th, fight this guy for 14th, even if there's a whole group of 6 other cars half a second up the road and you're fighting for the back of it, But if you want to improve, you'll see, okay, I could have got more positions there if I didn't waste time with this bloke. So
there's a lot of guys who have no sense of perspective when it comes to daily racing. They don't realise that they're not in the top split. They just think the people they're racing are the best people on the game at the time, or whatever. It's weird. It's a weird concept.
You typically see the people that are smarter right at the top, and you don't necessarily need to be the fastest person to get good results.
Yeah,
that's some of the, I think, like particularly with the game how it is, there's so many random elements. Like people get disconnected and people get penalties for looking at the people the wrong way, and if you're just careful about avoiding contact and stuff, you will gain positions now.
Yeah,
and that's not to say that that's a good thing in this game, but the people that actively create contact with other people are getting heavily punished. And yes, the penalty is ridiculous for running to the back of someone and getting 5 seconds. Yeah, but is it probably going to teach them that you can't run to the back of people? Probably.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, it is what it is. That although going back to that German weekend, just like put yourself in that position and like just think about like how crazy that is. Like for me as well, I didn't pack any extra luggage because I didn't go across thinking that I was going to come back with anything. And so like I had like the heaviest luggage, and every time you go through customs, people would make you unpack it because they looks like you're smuggling some massive thing through. But like, you know, like all of a sudden you're effectively, there's nobody who turns up, and now everything on social media from Gran Turismo is your mug doing this stuff, and you're just constantly getting cycled through it. It's I don't know, it's one of those things. Like it was really, really cool, but at the same time, I wish I knew what I know now before then for a lot of that period of time.
What's your if you had to give one bit of advice for like obviously I'm kind of doing this selfishly, but what if you had to give one piece of advice to aspiring World Tour qualifiers or World Series qualifiers, people who want to go, feel like they're nearly there, aren't, or want to get to that stage one day in the future, what's one piece of advice you'd give to people who want to get there?
Don't spin.
Everybody used to say to me, I've got some advice for you, don't crash. I'll be like, thanks.
I got some advice, go faster.
Yes.
Push the accelerator harder.
I think one thing that's really underrated and that people don't realise is the mental aspect. That you have to be so strong mentally. And going back to what you said before, Nathan, about how there's lights in your face and there's cameras, and you have to be able to isolate yourself from that. And you have to be able to isolate yourself that when you look in the mirror, you've got Valerio Gallo in your mirror. And you can't go, oh, crap. And you have to be able to be like, I can do this, like I belong here. There's a lot of the drivers that were on those tours just lacked self-belief. Like they, you know, and like it's just one of those things that you see in all kinds of facets of life, that there are people that are amazing at what they do, but in their own minds they think they're shit. And it's like you have to be able to go on that tour and sit in that rig and go, I know I can do the lap times here. I've done them at home. I can do them here. And for me, that involved a lot of like prep the night before and also the morning of. So Matt Simmons and I would always go for a walk in the morning on the first day. And even though we were never in the same team, so we wouldn't talk about strategy, but we would just like talk through the race and what we thought we need to look out for and what things we could really do to really improve our pace. And I mean, you look at how Matt performs in the races, like never makes mistakes. And for me, the only time I ever made a mistake was in the Nations Cup at Monaco, where I launched off a curb in Dragon's Trail, which is on brand, really, considering it's Dragon's Trail.
Yeah, I was going to say that.
Not the curb of death. Not the curb of death.
Is 99.9% of players will have made, so it's not
really easy to make. Yeah, and I had just passed 3 people at once, and that's what my problem was, is that I was running around 7th, and I was like, oh, this is all right. And the qualifying position was... Yeah, and all of a sudden I'm in 4th, and I'm like, oh, I could qualify from this. And it was that lack of concentration that caused me to go off. And you have to be able to relax like that and just be able to like really lock yourself down. And how do you prepare for that? I don't know. But you see everybody that goes to their first event, hardly anyone does like super well at their first event, because you have to go along and you have to lose, which is as hard as it could be.
You have to make the mistake to learn from it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And you don't know until you've been there and done that. And it's probably more difficult now too, because for the next World Tour there'll be this whole bunch of people that have never done that before. And you have to just it's hard. You just have to be your best. Like the thing that I always told myself before the races was that I can't control how fast everyone else is going. So if they're running half a second a lap faster than me, that doesn't bother me. It's if I'm running half a second lap slower than what I know I can do, then that bothers me. If you run the best race that you know you can run, and that's good for 9th place, then that's as good as you're going to go. But if you run the race a second off that you know you could do and you end up 9th, then that's a completely different mindset. And like we talked before about Mikail and stuff, they are able to just knock it out ad nauseum. But there are definitely some drivers that you saw that were just amazing at home, but as soon as the pressure got on, they just were never able to replicate it. And it's not to say they did badly, it's just they never reach the level that they had going in. Like there are some people that won basically every race they did in their region and would go on to the event.
I've got a name to drop in regards to that. I think someone who I was surprised by at the World Finals last year was Killian. A lot of you guys will know Killian from France. I think he was in Monaco and he's now Prima. He basically wiped the floor in the Nations Cup and the Manufacturers Series in the online seasons. I think he won both of them. And then he turned up at the World Finals, and I don't know if he made it through the European pool. So there was European region race, and like the top 6 or 5 or whatever it was qualified for the final or whatever it was, and I don't think he made it through.
Yeah, it's crazy like that, isn't it? And people view the Oceanian region as the weakest, and they're probably right. But Andrew Lee, when he goes there, he took a lot of scalps of people that would have thought themselves much faster than someone from Oceania.
Yeah,
and
He's certainly very on form at the moment. Yes.
Yeah. I see Lee, like Andrew and McEwen.
Yeah.
I feel like we have them in Oceania, and that's good because they're pretty generally a good indicator of what the likes of like EMEA are doing.
Yeah.
Like I noticed for the I think it was the Suzuka race with the Supra that we just did, the top 10 was like low 57s or something, or 56s, and Andrew had a 57.0, like he was like less than a tenth off the top 10. So like I see Andrew and I'm like, well, that's pretty much got to be the gold standard. So I think it's good that we have those players like that, and the fact that he went to World Tour.
I went quickly on that topic. Twitchy as well is very high profile.
Twitchy, I think he definitely deserves a mention there.
He can certainly beat Andrew on his day. He out-qualified him in the Super Formula race. In fact, he did. Position.
You're right. Twitchy's definitely part of that group
honestly,
as well.
When things kick off, I think there's a lot of people that are going to come back and really throw their name in the mix. I think one that people are kind of discounting now and not really concerned about is Dan Holland or Metal Gear, who I would say is probably coming into any races he does right now with little to no practice. And I think once he puts his head back in the game, he will be competing with those guys at the very top, because obviously we know that he is undoubtedly on raw pace one of the best that we've ever really seen, isn't he?
He's like one of the best time trialers in the world.
He is. Yeah, he's a very fast over the course of an outright lap. So
yeah.
He's just relentless. Laps.
There's a general lack of like respect to our region, which is somewhat deserved in some ways, but like our mindset, I think, is so different to that European mindset, and it's hard because Europe and their region, like they might have 20 guys better than us, but they've got like 200 million more people than us.
I was going to say, I think population is always...
It's the depth in Oceania that is the problem. The guys at the top are up there, but the depth, like top split, you always are going to get guys who wouldn't even make it into the third split in EMEA.
Yeah.
At the bottom end of the Oceania top split. That's just the level of depth we have. We don't have it.
Because like our top split is generally top 5, top 6.
Yeah.
The
top split, whereas EMEA are probably the top 3 splits in general could all be in contention for actually taking that top spot if they're in position to.
Could show up on
exactly.
And population's always going to have a part in that, but it's just
100%.
Yeah.
What was I going to say? I remember that there were just people that would slander us to our faces at the events.
Wow.
About how we didn't deserve to be there.
Was that hard to take?
Really, we laughed it off. But it was particularly satisfying.
Attitude, yes.
It was just very satisfying to then out-qualify them and beat them in the race. You know what I mean? Like, that was...
Do you want to name drop? Was there anyone who you want to call out for that?
There are some people that I know for sure would have thought that we didn't deserve to be there, and then would come up and say that we did great jobs at the event. I'm like,
humble. Got a slice of humble pie, did they?
Like, I mean, like, if you look at... Generally, we perform pretty well, I think, Oceanians.
Yeah.
Well, we're not like...
At the top. Not necessarily in the Nations Cup. We were a little bit less prominent there, guys from our region, but the manufacturers series, I think there was an Oceania driver in the majority of successful teams,
Yeah. Yeah. That's not to say that we were like the fastest guys, but we were not like hangers on by any means, I think. But that comes as part of the thing.
You weren't the back markers.
No, and I mean, like, if you look at it's really hard at the moment with the player base that there is, but in the top split for our region at the moment, there's quite a few Oceanians that regularly run around the top 5, and that's not bad because the Japanese guys are obviously right at the top of the game.
Oh yeah,
and it's
the Asia Oceania region has enough depth to say it's it's not on par with EMEA, but it's getting closer.
We're close to the US, I think.
Yeah.
The thing that is interesting is that if we went back to a Oceania-only region, you would see a lot of the guys come back.
Yeah.
And it's really hard because you...
So, yeah. Although
because
you would have... Of that,
yeah.
Oh, no, go on. I was going to say, I think part of that is just because the races would be earlier. It would be a more convenient.
Yeah. Like, I'm tempted to hardly give it anything for the manufacturer season, A, because it'll be harder to qualify, and B, because the first race is at 11 p.m. on a work night.
I think. I think I wouldn't mind.
I can say if my first race was at 11 p.m, I wouldn't bother if I had work the next day. I don't even think I'd bother even if I didn't.
You've got it good because you're the Australian.
I know. I have it slightly better, but yeah, I can completely understand your angle there. I don't want to wait until 11 p.m.
If you want to qualify in a region,
and then if I do crap in the first race,
if you want to qualify in a region like Asia Oceania, you have to be prepared to sit out all 5 slots. And get
what does that go to? 4 a.m.
Yeah,
no thanks.
Yeah, the only people who can do 1 slot or 2 slots and go are Akagi, Yamanaka, Miyazono, those guys. They're the only ones who can turn up to one race, win, and then go to bed.
They're in the good time slot too. It is tricky. It's hard because like obviously before we've lost like 80% of who used to run in our top split. And a lot of those guys have performed really well for a long period of time. But that being said, people rise up and join in just like Twitchy before. And it'll be interesting to see how it's hard because how do you compare Cody to Andrew? But I feel like Andrew's at a higher level than Cody was.
I would argue that.
Which is like it's.
I think Andrew's problem, well, not his problem, but the thing about it is that he's risen to the top as he has, and he's done what he's done, but because of the pandemic and all that, there hasn't been a world tour for him to display on the stage, if you will.
He's had the world finals, and that's been his only live event that he's really shown his face at, and obviously he did quite well, but he's still in the early stages of going to a world event. Like you were saying earlier, Simon, was you go to the first one and you're there to experience and learn, and you're not going to win it the first time. And I think he's still in that period. He's obviously got very comfortable at the top of the Oceania level, and he's really stuck his head out in the Asia Oceania region. He's won races there, and he's competing right at the very top, even against the very best of Asia. But I think when the pressure comes on at a World Series event, he's not quite ready for that yet. Like he's not.
He definitely. Yeah, he's definitely performing well enough to be able to get himself to more world tours. When they happen.
It's one of those. I don't really want to make a decisive.
It's just a matter of I
don't really want to say one way or the other because we don't know. I mean, he might surprise us. He might be able to do the Hizal thing and just zone out. But
I think the next one he goes to, he will be competing for the podium. I think the world finals that he went to last year, they were his experience one. They were his this is the first time racing against these guys. I've got to learn what it's like to race them, and then next time I come back, I'm going to be trying to beat them. You know what I mean?
He's going to have to learn racing on a setup that's completely foreign to you. That's the hard thing.
That's a tough aspect too. I
just remember the last world tour I did was 2020, and I was with Karatza from Brazil, and I was with Yamanaka, And Karatza had someone crash into the pole outside his house an hour before the race and knock his power out. And so I had to do his race while the power was coming back on.
Wow!
It was at 3:30 in the morning. Yeah, it was at 3:30 in the morning New Zealand time. It was
Did you take time off work for that event?
Yeah, I had the next day off. Yeah,
Nice.
As you would.
Yeah. Because by the time you finished, and by the time I was the first race, so by the time the event finished, it was like 7 a.m. And that's inherently difficult as well.
It was on Europe time.
Well, obviously, they weren't going to do it around New Zealand time.
Tom and Jimmy doing commentary. Of course, it would revolve around effectively. It's not it should be one time or the other, but yeah, of course.
I had a question for you guys actually.
Ooh.
What is
How the turntables?
I know. Well, actually, two maybe. What's your all-time favourite World Tour moment? And what's something that, like, you don't know how it works, or it, like, mystifies you, or it's like, I wonder how that works at a World Tour?
I'll go first for World Tour moment, because I can think of one off the top of the dome. And that'll give you guys a second to think about something. So, best World Tour moment for me, there's a few. But the one that sticks out when you ask that question is, I don't know if any of you guys remember, but it's Blažan's overtake on Danny Solis at Dragon Trail Seaside at Sydney in the X29.
Did you make a TikTok? Did you make a TikTok?
I did. I made a TikTok about that overtake. And it was just like, he timed it so well with Jimmy's commentary. Like, the commentary lined up with it perfectly. Like, he got a run on Danny down to the hairpin at the bottom of the hill, and he was in the slipstream. Danny braked, and Blažan just yeets the wheel to the side, hits the brakes a bit later, meets the apex perfectly, and runs through past Danny. It was amazing. I think they might have even been on the same tyre. I can't remember exactly. That might be incorrect. But he braked so much later. It was almost like he wasn't planning to go for a move. But he did, obviously, in the end, and it was just like Jimmy labelled it perfectly when he said
it was almost like fingertips. It was always just like
Jimmy called it a snap. He said snaps to the inside, and it was just the perfect word for it because it was so quick, man. It was amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I would say a particularly memorable moment for me. It would be quite cliche to say the Nurburgring incident, but I'm gonna say I think it's when Hizal won something. It was something quite big, but he always had this like really composed.
This is 2019
aura.
World Finals.
I think so. Yeah, he always had this really composed nature, like super chill, just like really relaxed. And then like I forget what sort of race it was. It was probably a final, and he just like sat in the chair and just let out a big roar, like just release all that emotion. And I was like, "Wow, this man is an absolute animal."
Yeah, it was great, that moment.
Nice. For me, I'm going to say it was Lukowski and Miyazono. The only reason I say that was because it was the Sydney World Tour was the only one that I got to watch live because of just the way it worked. And my work schedule at the time, I could never be up at whatever hour to watch Germany or watch New York or watch Monaco or any of that. So for the Sydney World Tour, I had all my food. I had it Chromecasting on the big TV.
That's so good.
The whole work set up, man. And I mean, obviously, I was gutted for Cody because obviously being the closest thing we had to a kinsman, we were naturally rooting for him, and to win on home soil like that, like how good would that have been for him? So like I said, I went all out watching the Sydney World Tour.
I've one for myself and one for watching, and the one for me was the World Tour in Sydney. That last lap was insane, and just you can hear the cheers on that YouTube video, but in person it was like being at a rugby game or something like that.
I've seen an in-crowd piece of footage from that final lap. There's a YouTube video, you can look it up, of like the view from the crowd, and you're absolutely right. It's the atmosphere was just insane. Yeah,
it's a real shame that like COVID happened then, because that was such a launching point for that 2020 season. My favourite actually part was the Austrian round. You would have thought it would be Germany, but the Austrian round I was just more composed at, having talked before about how like I just had no. I wish I knew what I know now for that German round, but the Austrian round, it was the introduction of Red Bull Ring in the wet, if you remember. And the Super
I was
was.
going to say that's one that they did Group B cars in the wet, wasn't it?
Oh, it was Group 3 cars. It was the bloody.
The manufacturer series also did a race at Red Bull Ring.
Tinchny dominated that.
Audi won it.
The MR cars were all like 1.5 seconds faster than the FR cars. And our car was dreadful. Like, it was terrible. And
what were you in again? Sorry?
The Supra. So
Supra.
awful.
Oh, God.
Awful.
Yeah, no.
It would be
as bad as it gets.
The worst car to drive, yeah. But we finished third at the end of the round for that, despite the fact we started second last in the race before. And that was really satisfying because I was with Manuel Rodriguez, who was like he'd gone to all the tours, but he'd never been on the podium. And we were sat there, and I like tapped him on the shoulder. I'm like, dude, we're going to get third. And I just remember that moment from looking up at the scoreboard and looking up at the points thing at the same time, and he was like, oh shit, because he realised because he thought we were fourth. And that moment with Yamanaka and Rodriguez, you can see we all run up and hug each other at the end, because it's like when we turned up having qualified 11th the day before, we're like, there's no way we're going to be on the podium for this. And to do that, that was really satisfying for me. That was my favourite time.
Oh, good.
So what's something that's mysterious?
Oh, yeah.
What's something that's mysterious to you guys?
I've been thinking about this. I don't know.
I don't have a deal like a what happens behind the scenes sort of deal.
Yeah, like, I don't know. What's something that you really want to know? What's like Jimmy like, for example?
I was going to say, you mentioned before about like the camera direction. The fact that they get like any shot that you want, even ones we haven't seen before. Like, that's cool.
Yep. Yeah, that's really cool.
I don't know. I'm fairly satisfied with my understanding of how it all works. Okay, Atom.
I got a good question for how things work. I want to know what the system is like for, the way I envision it. You get put on this tour, you fly to your location. I don't know who picks you up from the airport. You go to a hotel that's obviously organised. And then is there like the way I see it is like it's like a school trip. You've got there's a teacher there that's given the orders. It gets everyone up at 7 a.m. and says, "Everyone get on the bus. We're going to the event centre." And then at the end of the event, it's like she or he is standing there, and it's like, "Everyone form a line in front of me." And all the competitors get in a line, and they
single file line,
and then you all walk to the bus together. So how does that actually work? Who's in charge, and how much freedom do you really get?
That is a good question. Basically, what you described is sort of what happens. You fly over, and you have to clear the customs, and then a polyphony member will meet you. And
wow,
when you
imagine being the employee that does that.
Oh yeah, it'd be awful. Well, because everybody's flights come in at various times across like an 18-hour period, so they're constantly going back and forth. But we had a PR manager, so her name was Georgina, and she was in charge of getting us all various places, and so. The Nurburgring tour was real chill for a lot of, for me, because nobody gave a shit about who I was, so I didn't get any of the media stuff. But then the New York one, New York was awesome, but we had, what people don't realise is that, they make those 2-minute short videos, so they used to make those, hype videos. That was 4 hours of filming for us. We'd go places, you'd have to walk places. I remember in Monaco that Matt and I did go-karting with most of the people, and Matt and I did a track guide for it. We walked around the track and filmed all that and never used it. And then I don't think they used any of the footage really from that go-karting at all, but that was an entire afternoon. And it's it's sort of fun, but there was all kinds of filming things you have to do, and you have to do these the intro videos, and they ask you what your favourite car is, and
I think that goes. I think that goes for most events, and anything with media or filming. There's always going to be a lot on the cutting room floor.
Oh yeah,
because you'd rather come away from an event with too much content than go, oh crap! What we should have done was a go-karting segment with Sidawg. Yeah,
I just
you would end up with a lot of stuff of that.
Would you say that, given all the filming and the tight schedule you've been talking about, would you call these world tours a holiday?
Oh, No, not at all. That's the thing. Is that
Interesting.
people used to refer to them as like free holidays, and it's like, well,
Yeah, well, that I would say that's the biggest description I've heard.
That's one of that's one of the big things that I've like, because we were talking about this a while ago. I can't remember who with exactly, but they were talking about for the price of a wheel and a rig, and you get the chance to travel the world for free, which
I've heard
which
this
sounds
one.
good in theory, but if it's basically a glorified field trip like you're saying, then you're in New York, but you're not exactly dancing around Times Square, are you? You're in a theatre somewhere racing, so it's not quite the holiday or the touristy thing that they think it is.
Each tour was different. New York was where the most downtime, which was awesome because, like, I love New York as a place.
That was a bad example. Sorry.
But having said that, we did have 2 days in which we had to go and stand in Times Square and take photos. So I was like, you can only go and really look to some degree. We walked around Central Park once. But take Sydney, for example. Yeah, literally my day was, you get up at 7:30 in the morning, you have a meeting, and then you eat breakfast, and at 9 you shoot across on the ferry to the venue, and then you're filming, and then you've got a practice session, and then you're filming, and then you've got something else, and you've got a dinner, and then you're back at the hotel. And it's like, we saw none of it.
We saw the footage of the boat at the Opera House, though. So there was a bit of a party there.
Oh yeah, that was the end one. Yeah, that was all right.
That's about a couple of people. I think I heard Tidney talking about it. Was he'd often ask the devs when they organised the event, like, could you book my flight home for a week after the event, and then you can go holiday in the meantime.
Yep.
Yeah,
I did that. Yeah,
that did happen.
They would do that.
Jordan.
I'm assuming they wouldn't. They wouldn't cover any extra accommodation. They literally just book your flight for a week later.
Yep. So I did that when I did that after Germany because I always wanted to go to Paris, and I figured that.
Okay.
And at the time, I was like, I'm never going to travel back to Europe ever. This is like a one-off. And so then I win, and I have to carry all my shit for a ticket tour through Europe. I was like, and also at the time, it was that heat wave, which was fantastic. There was a time with the world tours that everywhere I went there was a natural disaster, which was because it was a heat wave in Europe that was killing people. Then we went to New York and there was a heat wave, I think. Then when I went to Austria, it was still the same heat wave. Went to Monaco and there was landslides, and then went to Australia and there was the wildfires and then the flood on like the same weekend in Sydney.
Bloody hell!
Wow. I was like, what's next? Plague, and then of course COVID hit. So it was kind of like,
the ultimate kick a man while he's down.
Yeah, it was just missing the locusts, and we would have had the full like apocalypse thing.
The plagues,
you could travel however you wanted. Like Tidney did a road tour of New Zealand when he was here for Australia.
I was saying, I was going to say to Smoke, Jordan from GT Planet was obviously over for Sydney, and he messaged me because obviously Home Corp and GT Planet have been involved for a fair few years, and he messaged me and he said, we're in Australia and it's only an hour flight to Auckland, so I might go over, spend a week in New Zealand. Is that cool? And I was like, yeah, sweet as. And he ended up staying at Hampton Downs because they've got B&Bs there, and he had a good old little, went to like the Coromandel, went to like the Waikato and all sort of around the place. So
basically
it's cool.
PD they're really accommodating, they're really nice, and the people that organise it are fantastic. Like they cop a lot of flack obviously on Twitter from people, but like as a company they're really, really friendly and nice, but everything is paid for as well, and because it's experience focused, you're like in 5-star hotels and beyond the wildest dreams of a lot of people. And I think in some degree us Oceanians really benefited more from other people, because a trip to Germany is not as exciting for someone that lives in France as it is for someone that lives in New Zealand. And all the Europeans loved the Australian tour, whereas that was kind of
the Aussie tour would be that thing for them.
Yeah, on the flip side,
it's sort of unique in that we're on our own little island.
We can't
you can't just wake up and go.
World Tour, let's go.
I'd go to that.
I would love to see. I'd love to see a Queenstown World Tour. That would be
Oh yeah.
because they go to like iconic tourist places. So.
They do, yeah. That would actually work. You should put that to them. Do you have an in?
Oh, we tried. Well, I don't know if I still do, but they were set on having an event in the Coliseum in 2020.
Oh,
really?
wow.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's it's pretty amazing, isn't it? But yeah, I think what people don't realise the most is just the travel. Like I said,
Yeah.
I remember even on the bus to the Nurburgring, we landed in Frankfurt, and it might be like an hour and a half bus drive, and our bus had no aircon, and it was 40-something degrees.
Oh God!
And we'd just got off the plane, and it's
These heat
like
waves are killing people, and
Yep.
they don't even have
I remember being wedged between Matt Simmons and Kenny Conomos, and we had to like unstick each other by the time we got on the bus because we're just wedged into each other. Yeah, some miserable times, but also some very good times. That's the.
Yeah.
I think that what everybody is brought together by is that we're all there for the same reason. Everyone gets along really, really well, and
No, that's good.
it's quite a fun vibe, and it's quite different to the ultra competitive vibe that happens when we're racing online.
Did I
Alright.
did I hear correctly on the commentary for one of the events? I don't remember which one it was, but didn't your mother and father follow you to one of the world tours?
Yeah, they came to Sydney. Yeah.
That's the sort of sport I strive for. That would be
that
amazing.
was in some ways like the most special one for me, particularly as we raced, because that was my last race technically. I don't know if I'll do another world tour, but my last race was Group 3 at Bathurst, if you remember that, and that's like
that was
someone in our region.
BMW one, didn't it?
Yeah, they were very fast. But yeah, being able to race in front of my family was really, really cool, and because they watched everything that I've done. And I'm sure it's the same for you guys. Like, if one of you guys qualified, they're your biggest fans. And so,
I know my grandma lays in bed watching my videos.
Yeah, they love it, eh? Yeah,
Great. She doesn't understand a thing I'm talking about, but she's like, "Oh, you do so well."
Yeah, they're excited for you, right? That's the thing, right?
If you played football on a Saturday or something like that.
Yeah, your parents can come and watch you.
And in that regard,
it is like that. Yeah.
That's where esports is better because there's no, you
You
don't
can watch from a distance.
Yeah.
And you can like live your dream, right? My dream was always to race cars, and I'm too old and haggard now to race like Formula One. So I can race these things, and I could race some of those. Yeah.
You can race anything. You could race a Formula One car just virtually.
That's also one of the other interesting bits about esports too, is that size doesn't matter. So you know how like in Formula One everyone's all skinny and about 40 kilos dripping wet. Even a well-rounded gentleman could do well.
Big boned. Just big boned.
No problem.
That is something I'd say about two parts. One of them that's really irritating is that I'm basically the perfect height and weight for a Formula One driver. It's like, damn it. And the other one is
just go back in time and get your parents to take you go-karting from 3 years old. Easy peasy.
You should
go back in time, let them win millions.
Head up Toyota and get them in the Toyota Racing Series, bro.
Did you ever get any attention from New Zealand Toyota and Gazoo Racing New Zealand or anything because you were competing for Toyota?
Yeah, so
really
on the boat in Sydney, one of the very high up people for Toyota Gazoo Japan came up to me and gave me a Toyota Supra model car. I was like, "Here,
wow,
thanks for joining."
Great.
Yeah, and domestically, it's hard because a lot of the companies here have the decision making is made in Australia. So, for example, like PlayStation New Zealand, their funding comes from the Australian arm, and so if you want to do any kind of event, it has to be approved by them. And Toyota Gazoo New Zealand's got a very they're probably the most motorsport focused brand in New Zealand, whether it's the TRS or the 86 series or anything. And so there was talks about it because they wanted to just get a couple of us to drive Supras around and just do a filming day and stuff like that when the GR Supra came out, but nothing ever came of it because COVID happened, and then they, whether it's too difficult logistically or whether they don't have the money to be able to spend to do it, it was challenging.
I know they did something similar with Igor Fraga because he was obviously here doing the Toyota Racing Series in 2019.
He did. They did a lap in a Supra at Manfield.
Yeah, they did some Supra mileage with him about the new, obviously at the time, brand new Supra.
I mean, it happens overseas. Takari races Formula 4 in the Toyota Gazoo racing car. And Yamanaka, when I was
seen a lot of that.
Yeah, Yamanaka, when I was racing with him, was testing like GT3 Hurricanes at Fuji, and I mean, the opportunities were there. I'm surprised that because there's no real like Toyota's not as big in Europe as it is elsewhere. I think a lot of the drivers miss out on those opportunities. But within Japan, like you can see that Kawakami. So he's a Lexus guy. What's his PlayStation name? You'll know, Adam.
Kawakana.
That's the one. He is sponsored by Toyota / Lexus, and
that's cool.
Yamanaka is
drive for Lexus.
Yes, Yamanaka is, to my knowledge, employed by Toyota now. And
I believe Takari is also in the same boat as Yamanaka, which is going to make the Toyota qualifying battle quite interesting.
Oh yes, yep.
Oh,
that's the reason I'm not choosing Toyota this year. Oof.
Who you
boy.
Trackside Lounge leak.
That's secret. Very
Yeah.
I'll give you a clue. It's got 4 wheels.
Whoa.
Scoots
my God.
on the podcast.
I've been wanting to ask. We don't obviously need to get right into it because we've talked extensively, and there's obviously a bit around the things that are wrong with GT7 at the moment. But given the state of it, what is your attitude coming into the GT World Series? Well, assuming one's happening soonish.
I would have thought that it will come out soon because they have to.
Yeah.
They have to do it soon if they're going to run us in, because you have to backdate it, right? Because they want to have a world final in November, and so you've got to have about 3 months of qualifiers usually, and so that leaves us until the end of like September. And you'd always qualify for events more than 2 months in advance, so you knock 2 months off September, and it's July, and you're okay. Here we go.
Yeah.
So
we talked about this. We talked about this in the last episode about the fact that because this Toyota Gazoo Cup that's going on at the moment is basically the first legit racing. It's the first thing that's not a test season, right?
The official championship is the only one right now,
Yeah, exactly. And when they announced it, it was interesting because obviously the game was still in a state, and it still is in a state, but they'd kind of painted themselves into a corner of, here's the deadline where the game has to be in a better condition.
Yep, they gave themselves a real firm deadline,
And
which wouldn't have...
They've done the same thing with this. We want to have a world final in 2022, which is nothing wrong with. There's nothing wrong with having those sorts of plans, but like when the game is in such a current state. I mean, and again, at the time of recording, obviously we have an update scheduled tomorrow, so who knows what's going to come there. I'm not saying that'll be the big fix and everything sorted and yippee yahoo, but there's a deadline now.
Yeah, for me, it's like people want everything to be perfect yesterday, and it's just not how it's going to work. Like it could have been a lot better. For me, how
long was it before sport was actually in a really playable position?
That's a good question because
until the very end, was it?
No, there was like 6 months of sport being good, and everything else had something wrong with it. It was either the penalty system or the bot was awful. Or obviously at the moment everything's great. So
what about the connection?
What
about the connection? Because obviously the big problem with Gran Turismo at the moment is the lobby stability.
Yeah.
So for sport, how long were the lobbies dodgy, or were they sorted first time?
I wouldn't.
They weren't sorted at the end. They still had pit glitches all the way to the end.
Oh, and you wouldn't see other people's cars sometimes, and
they were certainly still a lot. They were still a lot better than they are now. So
in terms of like
I just thought maybe
joining. Because in terms of joining like a manufacturer series race or a Nations Cup race towards the end of GT Sport, like aside from your own connection inside your home, you're fairly confident you're going to be able to connect to the race, and it wasn't really a big factor for most people saying, I might disconnect though, is it worth all the practice?
Yes,
whereas now it's like, okay, I'm going to put a load of practice in, but I might disconnect, or the race might not start. I may get a black screen. My game might freeze halfway through the race.
Tell you what, after the region merger, there was actually a lot of uproar about disconnect problems, especially in the Americas region.
Yeah.
But GT Sport was not necessarily perfect.
Oh, I'm not saying perfect. I mean, my entire Gran Turismo Sport experience, I only got disconnected, and what I mean by disconnected is like black screen, like mid-race sort of thing. That only happened to me once. It was
Happened to
a
me
race.
once too.
It was a race at Tokyo. I was doing really well. I was in second, gunning for the lead. Black screen. In GT7, that's already happened to me 3-4 times now, and it's only been out for a couple of months. So,
Yeah.
like Smoke said, Gran Turismo Sport had its problems, but you were at least confident that if there was a problem, it was on your end. It wasn't the game.
Yes.
So
It's
Well, now you get the whole
The
lobby block black screening instead of just one
Yeah,
curve.
yeah.
exactly.
Like, I'll add, I've been able to complete every race that I've connected to, but I haven't connected to every race. Like, it's black screen before or after quali. I haven't had a freeze and I haven't had a proper disconnect halfway through a race. But still, I don't know if I'm going to connect when I enter.
Yeah.
I've not had
So
any
that-
problems yet.
yeah.
So,
Okay. Oh, well, that's all right.
luckily,
Sort of following
it would drive me mad.
So sort of following on from that, like I said, we have an update tomorrow. What are our
Yes.
expectations? Like, we know that there's cars coming. There's the 3 cars, 2 of which we know. One's still a bit of a mystery. The jury's out. There's going to be the usual things in the patch notes. Oh, we've done a few stability fixes. We've done this. But what are our actual expectations for this update?
Mine are very low.
Mine are low as well.
That's
I'll
good. I think
be
it's a good way to
surprised
be.
if it's. I'll be surprised if it's the 3. Obviously, well, I'll be happy when it's the 3 cars. Like, we know that's happening.
Yep.
But in addition to the cars, if there's like maybe a bop adjustment, I'll be surprised.
Maybe some new missions or some
Pretty
new
much.
races?
Yeah. Oh, new missions. That's potential. Yeah.
I
'cause
won't be
we never.
surprised with a bop update. I think a bop update will happen.
It's got to.
The extra
You can't be like
content-
3.5 seconds off the page.
3 cars we obviously know is coming. I could just about guarantee a bop update. Other than that, I can't see much happening.
Maybe some.
Like, we never knew the.
Will probably get patched again, and then 10 minutes later, it'll be
Oh,
200 PP.
I just started my grind last night.
Um,
But yeah, no.
the thing that's lost on people, I think, is that in our world, particularly, where we tend to only kind of hang out with people that play it competitively in like air commas,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But we're like 2% of the player base, and that's what really concerns me about GT7 and them not saying anything and not doing anything. Is that you've got we're like, our group is very vocal towards the problems, right? But there are loads of people that will pick this game up and be like, "Man, I love playing Gran Turismo as a kid."
Yeah.
They'll hop on, the thing will crash, and they'll go, "All right, fuck this," and they'll go and play something else.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
all those
right.
people are being lost to the game, and the complete lack of people talking and the complete lack of going, "Hey, look, all PD would need to do is go, hey, look, we know things aren't great, but we're working on it," and everybody would
Yeah.
be fine with it. But this whole kind of like, "Oh, what? Nothing's wrong," and it's like the dog in the middle of the fire, you know, the one that "this is fine dog,"
Yeah.
and it's like these people, they're the people that are playing the dailies. You know what I mean? Like, the reason why the population is so low is because the casual people that don't care about BOP and don't care about that, they want to buy like a 1990 Skyline and do it up and race against their friends. They can't do that at the moment. I think that's a fundamental.
Yeah.
That's the biggest issue with the game for me. You've got to make it so that people can play with their friends, because that is going to be the lifeblood of the game. If you base it like purely on making the competitive stuff sort of work, you can see from the leaderboards how many people into the competitive stuff. There's like, and the trophy metrics is such an interesting thing as well. Like, there's a trophy for completing your first race, right? And one of you might be able to bring this up if you look at your PlayStation app. Have a look at how many people that have played the game have that trophy for completing one sport mode race.
Completing
It'll be
one
like
race, right?
it'll be like 60% maybe,
Let's have a look
Yeah.
right here,
Well,
right now.
and that tells
sort of
you that 1 out of every 3 people that have bought GT7 haven't done a single race online. Yeah. So
Well, you've talked about this. I brought this point up before. Remember that the physics change recently, and Twitter was up in arms. But like you said, the likes of us associate with the top 1%, top 2%
Yep.
that are all going to be vocal for a game that does appeal to the masses. So the other 98%, the game needs to be, relatively simple to pick up and play. If you're gonna touch the throttle in a race car, like the new Genesis was like an absolute dog to drive. Someone buys the game and go, "Oh, let's try this brand new Group 3 car," and can't drive it. they're not going to enjoy the game.
No.
Yeah.
And, it comes at the expense of the top 2%, but, from a business perspective, you're not going to compromise 98% of your players for 2%.
Problem
That's
is,
what-
You got to benefit the biggest portion.
the problem is that from a business end, they won't care because they've already bought the game, so they've already got their money.
Well,
you know what I mean?
I know what you mean,
Yeah.
but it'd be a matter of someone saying,
Word
I've
of mouth
got a
will sell
PlayStation
more
Plus
copies.
subscription.
Yeah.
I've got a PlayStation Plus subscription to play Gran Turismo, and I can't drive the cars. They're going to cancel the subscription.
It's,
that kind of thing.
16% of people have finished a race.
Oh,
Hey?
they have finished
What?
one. So,
16.
so that's one,
One
and
six.
one
Wow.
six. So 5 out of every 6 people don't do a single sport mode race. That tells you everything you need to know. That
Well, I think
The
there's a
priority-
good chunk of game.
No.
There's a good chunk
You
of
wanna know
game
how many
for
people-
non-online.
How many people have the finished 50 races?
2%.
5?
1.5%.
Wow.
Haven't even
That's
done-
crazy.
yeah, it's that's what
Actually, I
people
don't
don't
know if
realise.
I've finished 1 point.
I was
say,
about to
I don't
say,
think
I
I've
don't
done-
even think I've
I
done
don't think
50.
I've done 50 yet, but that's just because
Well-
I hate dailies. So hey,
At most you can do at most 3 an hour. So that's what. How many hours is that you have to put in to do 50?
I'm not
That's
too
a lot.
fussed. I'm not
Yeah,
too
it's
fussed
true.
about getting it because it's one of those trophies that if like you said, we are the competitive bunch. We're the ones that compete. That trophy's going to come naturally. So I don't care. I don't have to do anything out of the ordinary.
The one,
I'm going to finish a race in a few months, and the trophy will pop up, and then the platinum will pop up, and I'll be like, sweet.
Yeah,
yeah.
What
I
you-
think the
yeah.
finish one sport mode race, that's a more telling trophy because
Yeah.
I think out of the people that have the game and are planning to race online, they probably would have done it by now.
and that doesn't count the people that do that once per race, get taken out, and never do
quit.
another one.
Yeah, never touch it again.
I don't want to dwell on the negative stuff, but when they brought out
No,
that,
no, of
that-
course not.
when they brought out that
We already had an episode about that.
when they brought out that
Already had
press
stuff.
release that said, people just need to have a long-term view of the game. I was like, you are so wrong, because their attitude there is the attitude there is you've gone, you've paid for the game now. Like, no, people paid for a working game.
The game will
can't-
be good later.
Imagine if you
pay us now.
bought a car and you rolled it off the lot and it just went and came to a stop, and you're like, oh no, sorry. In a year's time, we'll have the bit that makes your engine work. You'd be like, what the hell is this shit?
Yeah, you're right. You're
Fucking great
absolutely right.
analogy.
That's
You
fantastic.
buy like a Subway sub and it's just bread, and they're like, "Oh, did you want the lettuce? I didn't. You asked for a foot long." It's like, yeah, of course. When I asked for that, I asked for the whole package.
That's what
So
I
when you
said.
turn up and you get Gran Turismo 7, and it's like, oh, you can't do online races with your friends, and it crashes all the time. I don't think that's acceptable for people to then your answer to just be, well, if you give it a year or two, it'll be fine. Like that's
I've
just
also
not
said
on.
this to a lot of people because a lot of league runners were a bit up in arms about it. And they said, how can they bring out this game with the lobbies down, and how can they bring out an update, the big first update? Why would they bring out that update and not touch the lobbies? That's unbelievable. Leagues are so important to the game. And my response to that was like, yes, leagues are important, but leagues are important to the longevity of the game life cycle. So if I was PD right now, they would be at the very bottom of my list.
Oh yeah,
Lobbies and the situation with them at the moment, depending on how hard they are to fix. If they were an easy fix, I'd just be like, get them done, get it out. But obviously they're quite a difficult fix, and
People-
they are simply not
people are
important
mad about
in the
that.
grand scheme of things.
It is easy to forget too that PD completely broke the game when was it 1.07 or something came out. They completely broke it, and then managed to fix everything within like 48 hours. So they can, if the lobbies are,
They can really knuckle down
they
and
can really
get
knuckle
stuff
down.
done.
So
the thing is that people, it's unpopular, but they're always going to finish the single player stuff first, because 5/6 of the game, or 5/6 of the people playing the game are playing the single player stuff, and that's hard for people that people like us that I only play the online. I don't do the single player stuff. I play through it and I'm done. But
yeah,
I'm the minority here, and it's kind of like you feel like because you're in your own echo chamber that we're the only ones playing this game. It's like no, we're the ones. We're the least high priority on this.
the one thing
Particularly as people play it either way.
the one thing that does annoy me is the people that you see on Twitter that like tag Kaz in all of their complaint posts, as if Kaz himself is going to like read it and reply. It's like, just stop.
And he can't as well. Like he employs developers to do all that stuff. I'm sure he didn't want to put out a broken game, and he wants.
He really cares about it.
He loves this stuff.
Yeah, it's his baby, isn't it? It's his baby.
Gran Turismo 7. You remember with like the first week of it launching, and everyone was just in awe because it's basically how he wanted Gran Turismo 4. You know, it's basically
he wanted
the ultimate realization of the franchise.
It's a love letter to Gran Turismo 4.
Yeah.
And they did that fairly well.
And in that regard,
it's also not like
if you overlook the lobbies, the online play, because obviously Gran Turismo 4 didn't have any online lobbies, so they got that part accurate. But if you,
it's not like he's sat in Japan smoking ciggies and going, "Oh, this is all good." Oh, he's fully aware of all this stuff. That's why I don't understand why people keep posting videos over and over of the game crashing. It's like, oh yeah, we know, they know.
Yeah, we're well aware. Yeah, you're not breaking any news.
No,
I think did GT7 have like a proper beta period? I don't think it did.
No,
I didn't think so. So I think a lot of the issues I think we're seeing now probably would have come up in a beta period, but they didn't have one. So now they're coming up now, and they're like, we have to fix this now.
Yeah.
But I put a tweet out the other day. We see a lot about people saying, "Oh, terrible game, I can't play the game, why play the game, you're stupid if you play the game." I put a tweet out saying, like, I know there's problems, but I don't hate Gran Turismo 7. I think it's a pretty good game. It's just got to work.
Yeah, I don't for what I do off it too soon.
For what I do, it's perfectly adequate. I can race online. It connects most of the time. I perform well. I get good points. That's all I care about. Yeah, the daily races. Last week I thought was a pretty good week. Bathurst at night time and had some weird, interesting race A combo or something. Race B, I remember, what was it, Deep Forest Reverse. I found that good. I was just unavailable, so I wasn't able to race. But like those sort of weeks, it happens, and I can make content on that. Fantastic. This week, it's just not for me. But I think there's a good game under there, definitely.
What hurts me, I think, is that you've got all these issues we've talked about that are relatively long-term problems. Like the PP system, they just, when they started the game, they thought everyone's going to love tuning, and it turns out nobody likes tuning at all. And then they go, okay, so we're going to have to turn BOP on, but they've never accounted for the fact that BOP would have to be on while tuning was there, and so you can see it's just a complete mess. But what gets me is that you could so easily make those daily races really compelling by just changing the multipliers or having some thought about it. Do Group 3 at Dragon Trail and have 2 tyre compounds. Interesting.
Yeah.
Done.
5 times tyre wear or something.
Or have a race where it rains halfway through and you need to put wets on or something.
Yep, do that. And I mean, in the GT Sport days, people criticised at the time, but have like 10 times fuel races. I remember there was a time where we used to have like 18 times tyre wear in our GT Sport races, which is just insane when you think about it. You finish a lap and your tyres are cooked. But it meant that people that were smooth, you could if you rolled around a little bit off the pace, you would go longer and you'd have a better race. And the people that were really smart in how fuel worked would gain from it. But now it's like, for example, that daily race at Monza, particularly as they made the gaps between the cars so large, it's like almost 0.8 of a second between each car as you get into turn 1.
You're already on the limits of the slipstream.
If you're still in 7th or 8th, you're already like 6 seconds off the lead. And if you're in Europe, how are you meant to make that up against the guy that's on pole?
Yeah.
The other benefit.
I've sort of always said I think the tyre wear and fuel being on in race B, I don't necessarily think that is there because they intend to employ strategy for that race. I think that's there so that pit stops can be enabled, which tells me that perhaps we could see some dynamic weather. Maybe give us the option of pitting off a wet tyre because maybe the track is absolutely sopping wet, but then they put like I think there's a time multiplier or something. They put that way up and the track dries up in half a lap.
Yeah.
So I hope that's their plan for race B, but like everything we've talked about for race C is just like, come on, give us some better races. Like
I can accept them not putting a lot of time into the daily combinations while they sort everything else out, as long as that's what they're doing. Obviously, we don't know.
Yeah.
But if that's what they're doing, I can accept that,
Yeah.
I think even so, just make the multipliers a bit bigger.
You can just sit and forget. You don't have to like figure out a way to make it optimal strategy. You can just turn it to something crazy.
Yes,
and just be like,
4 and
you
5.
figure it out.
Done.
You figure it out.
Yeah, there you go. 4 and 5.
Yeah.
That'll.
Maybe
Maybe some people will no stop, some people will one stop. There you go.
You could, at the moment, you can make it 2-2, and it makes no difference at all to the race. You need to do something. Atom, I was going to say, with your exhaustive list of prompts and questions, have we covered them all?
Yes, we have. Yeah.
Oh, good.
We actually covered a couple of them by accident, which was great.
That's good.
I did want to at some point give the floor to you, Simon, to if you want to plug anything, if you've got some sponsors you want to shout out, or if you wanted to talk about something, off topic or anything like that, if you had anything that you wanted to bring in,
not necessarily. You can look at my Twitter if you want to try and win stuff. I'll be having giveaways there.
That'll be on his screen as you're watching
Well,
this, viewers.
a lot of it on my head probably, maybe up there somewhere.
It will be.
In all the
That's
negative
exactly
space.
where it'll be.
The thing that I would say is that what I'm looking forward to in the hopefully not too distant future is things like New Zealand-based competitions and Australian-based competitions, because I think that's fundamentally what the game's missing at the moment. And if you get an Australian-based competition going and you get all the Aussie-based guys racing and you fly over some of the New Zealand guys and you host a final there, and it doesn't necessarily need to be to the scale of a world tour, you're creating that content, right? And you're getting GT7 in the news and in a positive way. And you're also encouraging those people that are currently like lapsed GT drivers to have some incentive for entering. So take the example of this Toyota Gazoo. There's 2 people that are going to qualify for this. So if it's hard. Like, I'm entering, but I'm like, a real outside chance of doing it. Like a snowball's chance in hell. And but if you were like, I don't know, right on the cusp of thinking you might have a chance, at the moment you go, well, Andrew's one spot, and that leaves it's probably going to be McEwen or Twitchy for the other spot. Yeah. Why would you enter if there's no fun factor for the race?
Yeah.
But if there's all of a sudden you go, hey, like I remember in 2018, there was 30 people from our region. It was like 12 Japan, 10 Aussie, and 8.
I wish we had that.
I want to bring back regional finals because I just want to experience a live event,
Yeah. I think you could do it so easy too.
I would say like pretty much all of us here would have a chance at qualifying if there was that many spots available. Yep. But now with 2 spots,
it's not achievable, is it?
Hardly anyone have a chance. Like you've been to one and you're saying you have an outside chance. So
been to multiple.
Multiple, yeah. Sorry, multiple. Yes. Sorry, I don't want to sell you short there.
It is interesting. Like for you guys, if there was a New Zealand comp and it's the top 20 that qualify to go to Auckland, you'd be trying so hard, wouldn't you? Like, it would really encourage you.
Dream. That is the dream for me. A 10, 12 man, New Zealand finals. Like, I wouldn't even race in it if I had to commentate. I'd volunteer to commentate. I just want that spectacle in New Zealand, But obviously, with the lobbies as they are right now, you can't.
That's the frustrating thing. Like, that's such an achievable goal, I think, and it would be so cool because that's how my GT Sport thing started. Like,
you did the Let's Play Live, didn't you?
Yeah, because I hadn't played GT for ages, and I got a copy as a games reviewer because I do them from time to time. And I got a copy of GT Sport. I was like, I'll give this a go, and then I actually found I really enjoyed it. And then that New Zealand comp happened. Yeah, Let's Play Live.
There you go.
And so without that, I would never have probably tried in the FIA stuff. And you go, well, how different would it be now?
How different would
and so, and it's not necessarily for me. It's for those people that would enter a New Zealand comp that they see on Facebook. They go, I like GT, I'll play this. They'll travel to Auckland. They'll be like, man, this is awesome. And they'll try hard. And then they'll participate in the game. That's all you have to do really to make a real positive step forward. And it's true for Australia as well. And most people would just love the idea of being able to fly up to Auckland for the day.
Yeah.
Unless they live in Auckland, of course. But for you, like in Australia, if it was like, we're going to have an event at PlayStation HQ in Sydney, you'd be like, sweet as.
Yeah,
that'd be cool.
I'm there. I'll pay to go.
Yeah.
I'm surprised more people didn't go to the
there was a
Aussie World Tour, the Sydney one.
Yeah. That's my biggest regret. that was sort of before I really got to know everybody. So I would have just went as like myself. I wouldn't have gone as Smokescreen.
Yeah.
But it's just like looking back at that. It's just and to think that sort of the thinking now is that it's unlikely to ever happen again. I look back and it's like I should have just bloody went.
Well, you could have.
Freaking idiot.
The thing is that Hizal and Fraga weren't there, but you could have met all these other people that you've now watched the race over and over.
That you've now, shared the lobby with you.
I know most people in Top Split now, so like I would go there and it'd be like just a group of mates, you know.
That's what it was like. It was like the entire Oceanian Top Split was there.
I want to go for a beer with the Oceanian Top Split, man.
Oh, dude, how cool. Cool.
Atom, I want to actually settle it over a pint.
Yeah. Yes.
I'm sick of this racing. What's this racing crap? I actually want to settle it over a pint.
Oh, mate, I'm pulling that out if it ever happens. I am. You've convinced me.
That's so good. Oh, that is so good.
So, yeah, that's what I would be looking forward to. And like you said, Adam, as well, if I'm not competing in it, then I will be trying to basically run it, you know, whether it's in the back, like choosing the combos and stuff like that.
We've got a good top kind of division of New Zealand drivers. If you really go and tap everyone on the shoulder, you know, you could probably fill a 12-man race with some seriously competitive guys.
Yeah, it's lots of good guys on iRacing that would come across, and if you make it worth their while. I remember the
Corsa as well. A lot of ex-GT guys over there.
Yeah.
Like all the Hooncourt guys would give it a go, wouldn't they? Now?
Oh,
and there's like 5 or 6 guys there, and you go that.
Well, Mr. Team Boss here could say, "Give it a go. You're off the team."
Oh, hey, hang on a minute.
Force them to have a go.
I remember the 2017 event I did had $5,000 for P1. You know, people were into that.
That's right. I was at that one. Because a mate of mine hit me up and said, "Oh, you know, there's a LPL Gran Turismo thing. Would you like to come?" And I was like, "Yeah, sweet as." I came and watched that.
Some interesting people in that race. There was me. There was Monkey Matt. Yep, famously took me out at 2-1. Never forget. There was Lion Face, the guy from Invercargill, used to be a top split racer back in the day.
Yep.
And there was a certain Josh Ritchie, who's now known as Josh Revell, who is now mega YouTube famous.
Yeah.
Really?
I know him.
He was in that race. I do remember that.
Huge. He's massive on YouTube now. He's got like...
he does...
Josh Revel?
He does like Formula...
Oh, that guy!
Yeah.
He does like Formula 1 videos. He basically... I think I've watched a couple of his videos basically slating a couple of Formula 1 drivers. I think he's done a Mazepin episode and a Mahevir Raghunathan episode. They're funny. They're absolute... They're absolute. They're quality videos.
He has like 100,000 subscribers or something now.
Something like that.
It's interesting, but it's like a lot of people that was the launching pad. For people, so I really hope we see events like that. But unfortunately, I don't rule the world, so I don't get to choose these things.
Be good if you did. Good if you did.
Give it to
world would be a better place.
Better world for it. Yep.
For GT events in New Zealand,
So. Just as obviously, I think we're starting to sort of draw this to a close and all that.
Yeah.
If this will say obviously, if you could guarantee a car or a track or whatever, what would you bring into the game right now, if you could?
That's a good question.
Like an event, or what would I put into GT?
Well, we have an update tomorrow. You know, there's 3 cars, and who knows, there might be a track. What would you bring into?
What would I put in?
A car and a track.
It wouldn't necessarily create the most exciting racing, but I would bring in Monaco as a track.
Oh, I've been saying it.
And what I would probably do in terms of car would be... It's hard, right? Like, a lot of the favourites are already in the game, but I think they'd draw a lot of goodwill if they brought back something from like GT4 era, like the iconic cars, like the TS020. You know, like those
TS020 at Monaco was one of the license tests, wasn't it?
Yeah. it'd be one of those things where it's like, there's no reason they can't. It's the car itself was in Japan, near their offices, so it's like they've already scanned it before. That's what I would add in. But what I fear is that they will continue to add in, I don't know, like a new Renault Clio, and it's like, okay, cool, pointless.
Never going to use it. Yeah.
And then
the amount of time it takes to bring a car into the game. I mean, I would assume they already have most of the content roadmapped. Like, obviously, we've got the
They probably do.
One of the cars to license. So yeah.
Well, one of
they roadmapped the Greek GR010 a long time ago, didn't they?
Yeah. Well, one of the cars that's coming tomorrow is that SEMA winning Camaro, which has been waiting to come into the game since 2014. I think it's been waiting like 8 years to come into the game.
One car that I think
everyone thought that it wasn't coming because the Nova and the Mac 40 are cars that won the SEMA award after the Camaro, so everyone was like, "Oh, is the Camaro not coming then?" So
we'll have some sponsor licensing. Doesn't it have like Red Bull on it or something?
It's got.
It's a GoPro.
GoPro. Yeah. GoPro's really hard with licensing. I bet that was the hold up.
Probably.
We'll probably see the GR Corolla as well at some point.
I reckon that'll be a cool car to have.
I wonder if that'll be the final round of the season.
Maybe.
That's a question mark round, I think.
It might be.
Well, I've always said the interesting thing to note about that last round is that on schedules and stuff, like for round 3 with the GR010, they've always had Le Mans there. It's not in game, but like if you go onto a particular website or whatever, see the schedule, like it's always been known it will be some car at Le Mans, whereas for round 7 we don't know the car or the track. So that tells me it will probably be a new track.
It'll be the GR Corolla at Monaco. Just watch.
I'll do that one.
It'll be a
I'll
Japanese
do that
track.
race.
It's got to be a Japanese track for the Toyota Cup.
I reckon Apricot Hill, because that's the only track that's been teased that we haven't got yet.
And plus, what other good Japanese tracks are there that aren't already? Because you got Suzuki, you got Fuji, you got Autopolis, you got Tsukuba.
Oh, that's arguably
Autopolis. I'd throw out of it.
Yeah. So Autopolis, more like Topolis.
Oh, got him.
Get it? Get it?
Yeah, there are things they can do that would make it interesting and compelling. That's all I have to say. It just
no, that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, this is the same company that spent quite a bit of time like replicating a moon buggy and the gravity on the moon for the GT6, which don't get me started. And then why not bring back where's Lewis Hamilton? He's in the credits.
He's in the credits.
True.
Bring back some kind of challenge. That was really popular when it came out.
The time trial challenge is one of them.
I like that the circuit experience is harder this time around because the Lewis Hamilton thing was a paid DLC, so you basically paid money to learn that Lewis Hamilton's a bloody good driver. Whereas this time around, because the circuit experience is harder, it's like it's not DLC. Like, why does it always have to be an expansion? Why can't it just be in the game from the start? So I can respect it.
I always thought the Lewis Hamilton DLC was a good late life addition to GT Sport, so maybe there's something in the pipeline. Something I did notice about that DLC is I think some of the World Tour drivers knew about it about a year before it entered the game, and you can see it's got Lewis Hamilton's really old haircut in his photos. So it obviously takes a while to be in the game, and I think even when the World Tour drivers got shown it a year before it entered the game, it was playable. So you can imagine how long it might take. So I don't know, there may be something in the future like that media release says.
I've heard
a couple of years away, but
about the Lewis Hamilton DLC that when it was demonstrated at the World Finals, when they announced it, that Kaz jumped in and started the Nurburgring one, that you time trial against Lewis Hamilton, and he got like a quarter of the way through the lap and he was beating Lewis, so he turned it off.
Lewis Hamilton was an interesting dude in 2019 because it's really easy to sit there and Max Verstappen was in Monaco as well. It was really interesting to because you see how they are in PR stuff and kind of stuff. But he was such a compelling person to listen to, and the way that he described it might be on YouTube the entire thing. The way that he describes how he like he did like a lap of a track, and I think it might have been Monaco, and he was like, yeah, and so in this corner I knocked down the brake balance to 48.52, and then I'm adjusting this, then I'm adjusting the thing, and like the way his mind works was just incredible. Like, it was really cool. You don't have to really like him as a person.
You don't have to like them to respect them as a driver.
Well, just that he was like, he's at the top of his game. And anybody at the top of the game is really interesting. I think, like Federer was in tennis and Tiger Woods was in golf, albeit a decade ago. One thing about World Tours, by the way, that I think was great about them is showing off new content. Because it was really cool to turn up and do Spa. And from my perspective, it was great because you couldn't practice it beforehand. Everybody turned up and their first lap was at practice.
It was on
the day off. Yep.
Yeah.
And it makes people tune in. They'll go, hey, we're going to announce a new track of this thing. People will watch it. But yes.
Something I liked about that Spa reveal is that when they did the teaser, they did like a thing where they smacked like a load of tweets on the screen and covered the screen in tweets calling for Spa. I think that goes to show Gran Turismo do see a lot of what goes on Twitter. They may reply to hardly anything, but they obviously see it.
They replied to Noodles with that upside down Super Formula car.
They did, yeah.
They did, yeah. Well, there are no words.
Yes, that was it, yeah.
The most famous 4 words in Gran Turismo folklore.
Kaz did like my tweet when I posted my 25th anniversary steelbook had just arrived, and I photographed it still in the cellophane and all that, and he liked that.
Cool.
So.
Yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah.
That's wholesome.
That's something that people don't see. I think is that they genuinely care about the game, and they're probably more annoyed about its poor state than most people are.
Yeah.
Oh, exactly. I mean, the review bombing was particularly that was a bit uncalled for, really.
Well, particularly because
obviously they made some poor decisions there, but I never once thought about making a bad review about it.
No, neither. In fact, I'd be interested to see what the Metacritic score is now.
We know it's going to be supported for a long time as well, so we would never criticise it too early, but a lot of
people don't have that foresight.
Game critics are very much, I paid for the whole game, I want the whole game, you know?
Yeah. And the problem is that, there was just so many, I don't know about you guys, but you know how you turn on your Google Chrome and it comes up with some relevant news links, and just all of them were
ad press
media outlets about Gran Turismo, and even GT Planet posted something that it wasn't exactly overly critical, but it was critical, and that sort of says something when even a group that's established itself around Gran Turismo, it's in the name. That's when you know that something needs to be done.
Yeah, it's hard because as a games reviewer, you can only review what's in front of you as well.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Yeah. The whole, if the game doesn't work, then it doesn't work.
All of Kaz's promises about the game will be better later, but for now.
And I was lucky enough to have it 2 weeks before it came out, and so I was playing it before. And the version of that game is really good because you could only play the single player, and the online there was nobody to play online with. And so when you take that, you isolate the multiplayer away from the single player experience, it's fantastic. But then on the patch on day one, they introduced the microtransaction stuff that wasn't in the build that people did for the reviews, which is shady at best. Because
microtransactions are always a bit of a touchy one, though. It doesn't
Star
matter
Wars
what
Battlefront 2 intensifies.
Exactly.
But if you're fundamentally changing the game right after everybody's finished reviewing it, and so it's no longer representative of what people just reviewed, that was what I thought was a bit dicey. Yep.
But Racing was another one that got really flamed for that.
Yeah. You can't present something to reviewers and be like, haha, and then at the last second pull the rug out from underneath them and be like, no, this is actually really what it is.
Yeah.
When you review it, and that's what people are paying for. So. Yes.
All right.
There you go. You got your podcast.
Simon catchphrase. Where'd you develop that from?
It's actually from Jono.
It came from Jono.
It's his catchphrase. Yeah. Stolen.
Okay.
That's a shout out.
Much like
a lot of my catchphrases come from somewhere else. I always say I am stupid. I switch off everything.
Yeah.
Like the Aussie stole a pavlova. Yes,
No.
I'm not saying a word. I'm outnumbered.
Ah,
All right.
awesome.
Well, I think we could go on for ages, but I am conscious Atom has a bit of a league to run.
got places to be.
Mad. What's it called? Mad Rad. Go and check him out on Twitch. It's
Mad
on
Rad
your screen to
live.
go and have a look.
Live right now. Well, not as of the time of the video, but
Live right now as of recording.
Yeah.
By the time it goes out, he will have been live probably 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
But there you go.
Yeah.
But anyway,
We must have
I
Cy
think
back.
it's been... Yes, I think it's been a really good episode. It's been really interesting hearing the insights from an actual World Tour driver and, just having a bit of a talk about the current state of GT7. As for this episode today, we are going to wrap this one up here. So I'd like to thank everybody for watching. I'd like to thank, once again, Atom and Nismo for helping with the stream and being here, or helping with the podcast and being here. And a massive thank you to Sidawg for agreeing to come onto the podcast as our first guest. Absolutely can't wait for you all to see it. But yeah, as for that, that's going to be the end of this podcast today. So do hit the like button if you enjoyed, and do subscribe if you'd like to see more podcasts and guests on the podcast from us. Do leave a comment as well, as questions, comments, and constructive criticism, as always, are very much appreciated. But that's going to be it from this one today, and that means that is it from us. So once again, I do thank you all for listening, and we'll see you later.
I
Good
smoke.
stuff.